Gin and Tonic Show. Today, I'm your host, Almighty Atheismo. We're joined by the Rationalizer and our guest, Coughlan. He goes by Coughlan 666-616 or Coughlan 000, depending on which of his channels have been arbitrarily shut down by YouTube at any given moment. Thank you for joining us. Today, we'll be discussing the subject of tolerance. If you'd like to join us at any time to discuss the topic of the day or a topic of your own choosing, just send a Skype contact request or message to the Gin and Tonic Show on Skype. When you come onto the show, make sure to mute and minimize your blog TV so you don't hear yourself on an echo, which will disrupt the flow of the show and disorient you. Also, everyone who calls in the show is warned that this is being uploaded for later, recorded for later upload on YouTube and broadcast live on Blog TV. One of these days, I will get the whole thing right without stammering and stuttering and having to clarify. Okay, so we'll first kick it off to Coughlan. You can. Why don't you tell us what's going on in Belgium these days?
Oh, the Belgian thing's quite interesting. I was actually sent. I did a video on that yesterday. I don't know if anyone saw it, but I was sent this by about 4 or 5 people because whenever a video comes along, like it was a Russia Today video, which immediately rings alarm bells in my head when it's a fucking Russia Today piece, and it was basically I looked into it and it's what I call Pat Condell porn, and I was reading some of the I was just reading some of the comments on the video and just seeing the reaction to it. And when I looked into it, I thought that this is really they're getting a bit carried away as to what's really going on. The interesting thing I found was in the Russia Today piece that I saw, one of the guys they interviewed is a member of the main far right party in Belgium, which did a fuck sight more better than the I think is it called the Islam Party?
Yeah, I looked it up. I assumed that I looked around and people just kept calling it the Islam Party, and I assumed that was people who were just calling it the Islam Party who were too lazy to look up the proper full name of the party. But then I did look it up, and they are just calling it Islam. That's the name of the party.
Well, at least you know where you stand then. Yeah, I mean, the comparison I made between what happened, because they won, essentially, they won 2 seats in a local council election, which in politics is kind of like if you're in a boxing match with Mike Tyson and the other guy and the person who's fighting is a kitten with a sponge attached to its head. The level of difference or power that the claims that they will make Belgium an Islamic State does not worry me in the slightest. I mean, at their peak in the last 10 years, the comparison I made was the BNP in this country. The BNP had somewhat up to 18 council seats, which had something like 75 councillors, plus 2 European seats, which in sort of like, in political terms, is about 20 times more relevant than just 2 local council seats. It doesn't necessarily. To me, it was. I'm not saying there's not a discussion or a relevance to be had, but like a lot of things, these stories, it was blown so out of fucking proportion, and treated with such sort of like fear. And it's like they've got 2 local. The BNP have never ever been in a position in this country where they're on the verge of taking over, and they've had 20 to 30 times more power than these guys have at the moment. And the fact is, the seats they won, as I understand it, were won in an area where there are mainly Muslims. In the areas where there are not Muslims, they didn't win fuck all. So their chances of actually progressing or evolving, I have very little doubt that they will fail miserably in their attempts to do so.
Yeah, you know what else was funny is that story was on Russia Today, which of course is their state-run news agency, and they're saying that, or they're sort of alluding to the possibility of Belgium being taken over when Russia actually has a double-digit percentage Muslim population as opposed to the single-digit Belgium population. So,
well, the thing about Russia Today is, I say Russia Today is the best news station to go to if you don't want to hear about what happened in Russia today, or yesterday, or any other fucking day. And it kind of annoys me when people. I know people hate the mainstream media in like the West. They hate Fox News, they hate the BBC or Sky and all that. But then they'll immediately fly over to Russia Today, and it's like, this isn't like an organisation or a news company that's a mouthpiece for a political party. This is owned by the fucking Kremlin. This is Kremlin TV. And so to sort of put stock in sort of put too much stock in it, and they have so much shit. I mean, I actually made a list of YouTubers who had actually appeared on Russia Today. People like Cassie Deal 2, the woman who did the sperm video many years ago. She's been on there like 5 times. And you got like fucking Alex Jones and David Icke and Drinking with Bob. Drinking with Bob was on Russia Today on a new thing. Molotov Cockfail Mitchell was on Russia Today, introduced as a Tea Party rapper. I mean, this is not a news organisation. I know you've got to fill a lot of shit, but they have more shit than I see on most other shit news stations. So I never really put too much stock in any story I see from them. I'm just purely face value.
He must be pretty crap if he only raps at tea parties.
Well, it also you'd think the Tea Party is the one sort of organisation that has no interest in rap. And I mean, he did one rap video, and it was called OTP, which was about Barack Obama, and it was called One Term President, which I think he might have to take down in a couple of weeks' time. But yeah, but that's so yeah, it's a load of shite basically.
Oh, I was thinking of a like Tea Party British.
Oh,
everyone sitting around drinking tea. Would you like milk?
I apologise for missing your joke there. That's my fault there.
It's all right. It doesn't matter when you miss crap jokes anyway. It's just best to pretend they didn't happen.
Ask any of my audiences, mate. They'll tell you the same fucking thing.
Well, tonight for dinner I had a halal chicken burger.
I'm actually eating a kebab right now. I don't know if it is halal, but it was one I ordered that I was hoping would get here before the fucking show started. But it's still sat here half eaten next to me.
No, mine was definitely halal. It was an amusement park type place, and this goon I was really hungry, and they mainly sold chicken, and I mean, you know, fair enough. It's clearly labelled halal if you can read Arabic, you know.
You mean you can't?
It's there across in Arabic at the top, halal. It doesn't say it in English.
Speaking of which, I have our first guest participant, but he's not feeling well, so he didn't want to call in and speak. But I'll read what he wrote verbatim. He said, "Hello, I am Naveed from Pakistan. I think really that the intolerance is from the far-right Western Christian agenda, as we saw with the film that was made last month and the cartoons that were published in the French magazine afterwards. Also, he said there are laws for writing about the Holocaust being denial. I'm obviously English is the first languages. There's laws about Holocaust denial because it is a very sensitive thing for Jews, but there are no laws about publishing these cartoons when the depiction of Muhammad is a very sensitive issue for Muslims."
Well, he's right to an extent there, yes. I've actually made a video about this about a year ago. It was sort of regarding the whole freedom of speech issue in terms of like Draw Muhammad Day. And I brought up the fact that in many places in Europe, and right now there are people serving time in prison, I think some as much as 7 to 10 years, for denying the Holocaust. I think David Duke visited Europe, was it last year or 2 years ago? And it's not just Holocaust denial is one thing. You see it recently with these people sent to prison for tweets about jokes, and there was that guy who was arrested. He said something about soldiers. The problem is this: intolerance is never one way. It works both ways. The problem is that he's right in the sense that, you know, you look at a lot of these sort of counter jihad, I believe the expression used for these organisations, are basically far-right Christian organisations, or they're in some way connected with far-right organisations, either people in charge. I mean, you've got Atlas Shrugged, which is Pamela Geller, who's actually Jewish, but a lot of her funding comes from the same groups. And you've got Robert Spencer, who's this hideous fucking Catholic guy who make Mel Gibson fucking blush. And yes, but the problem is that these people know. We're at a point now where you've got the Danish cartoon in 2007, I think it was, and the reaction that incurred. Then you've got the Burn a Quran Day, and the reaction that incurred, and then you've got the Innocence of Muslims and the reaction that drew, and then you've got like the much lesser reactions to Draw Mohammed Day, with like when the Pakistan shut down the internet for a couple of hours and that. But the problem is these people now know what they can do to push certain buttons and say, oh look, this is what happened, this is what they're like. I mean, it ignores the fact that these sort of incidents only occur in certain countries. I mean, you don't see. I think there was a protest about the innocence of Muslims in the UK, and it went no further than a couple of people standing outside the US embassy going rah rah rah. This is nonsense, and it never happens anywhere. It always happens in the same countries, and that's what they want. Though they want to provoke that reaction. I think the fact that it doesn't happen everywhere, that sort of reaction, says there's more to it than just. If it was the reversed, if it was Christians over there in those countries, and it was Muslims over here doing the same thing, they'd be doing like the Innocence of Christ, like the Passion of the Christ films or something like that, and they'd probably get a similar reaction out of them. So that's probably where I stand on that. So yes, there are going to be there are sort of hypocrisies in the issues of free speech, but I don't think the response is to stop people from drawing cartoons and that. I think it's to ask ourselves, why do we need to sort of stop people denying the Holocaust? What do we need? Why is that something that needs to be legislated against?
Well, I've never really understood the law for against Holocaust denial. I mean, I can understand that because the Holocaust was kept secret from so many German civilians, and then when they found out about it, they were obviously appalled. They don't want it to be denied so that it's never forgotten. But to ban being able to say, I don't think it happened, that's banning people from being able to say what they think. However, it's kind of similar, but it is still different. Because if people in Germany, on a majority, want to ban people within Germany from saying the Holocaust didn't happen, then that's up to the residents of Germany. However, in the case of this Innocence of Muslims video, what you've got is people in one country telling people in a different country that they can't say in their own country, and they're trying to force it on somewhere else. I mean, I don't see Nick Griffin, BNP UK, said at some point in the past that he was a Holocaust denier. You don't get people in Israel going and burning down the UK embassy and killing the ambassador, do you? You know, that's what people in Israel aren't saying. You know, they're not saying, right, people in the UK can't say this. In Germany, they're not saying people in the UK can't say it. But if people within Germany want to stop people within Germany from saying it, that's up to them. I don't really give a damn, you know. Yeah. That's their choice.
I agree to that to an extent. I think the thing is, I think the problem I have with my main problem with Holocaust denial laws is it gives the Holocaust deniers every bit of vindication that they need to say, look, if what we're saying is so crazy, and if what we're saying is so easily refutable, then why are we not allowed to say it? And that taps into, that's why I think Holocaust denial is so prevalent, is because there's such a and you've got groups like the Anti-Defamation League who get people who go out and bother people who were overheard saying something by somebody in the street once or something like that. And to me, it just makes the Holocaust deniers more credible. And I think if there's one thing I've learnt about dealing with things like the BNP and Nick Griffin, is the best thing that happened with Nick Griffin is when he went on BBC Question Time and he made himself look like such a prize bellend that everyone sort of saw how they sat him next to a black American woman who destroyed him on so many points, who knew more about the history of this country and stuff, and it made him look fucking ridiculous. And that to me shows that you don't need to shut these people up.
The problem is on BBC Question Time, that's exactly what they did to him. They did shut him up because BBC Question Time is supposed to be UK political chat show about current political affairs. And then they got Nick Griffin on, and all they did was an hour-long character assassination about things he said 15, 20, 25 years ago. what happened to what one person said 25 years ago when he wasn't even a politician is neither politics nor is it a current affair. So basically what the BBC did, they had him on and did a character assassination, and personally, when I watched it, I don't like Nick Griffin. I didn't like him before and I didn't like him afterwards, but I thought what they should have done is let him continue talking about current affairs and let people like the American woman sitting next to him destroy him on the actual current affairs, and then it'd show actually how useless he is as an MP, whether he's trying to get our country back or whatever it is that he wants to do at the moment. And talking of intolerance, Nick Griffin recently, I don't know, is his Twitter account still closed down?
No, it's back up. It was back up within a day. They put it back up within a day. It was just closed for the time being because the police wanted to investigate the tweets that he'd sent. It was back up within a day.
Yeah, the tweet, in case anyone doesn't know, the tweets that he sent, basically Nick Griffin is a twat from the UK, and he's into politics, and he's basically a racist party. It's not officially a racist party, it just mainly consists of racists. And he's also anti-homosexual, and there was some bed and breakfast that told a homosexual couple that they can't share a room because they're not married. And the courts, it was all taken to court, and the bed and breakfast operators lost. And Nick Griffin posted the name and address of the homosexuals. His call was for people to go and protest outside their house. But, you know,
bring a bit of drama to their area, I think was what the word he chose.
Yeah, but, you know, putting it out in the public, someone's name and address, to a bunch of people who follow a homophobe, you know, that's obviously threatening behaviour, no matter how you look at it. But yeah, that part is they're intolerant.
I will say the thing about the question time thing. Just going back, I think the important thing about focusing on stuff Nick Griffin said 15 years ago is since he became a politician, he's learned how to talk like a politician. And the same thing with the Holocaust denial. Like 15 years ago, he openly said, I think his quote was, "It's possible that maybe hundreds, possibly thousands of Jews died in the World War II, but this stuff about gas chambers is complete nonsense." And the thing is, since he's become a politician, he's distanced himself. He hasn't denied that he hasn't denied his own denialism. He just doesn't say it outright. He says that I'm not allowed to say because of Holocaust denial laws, which is actually horseshit, because he's allowed to say in this that we don't have Holocaust denial laws in Britain. So he's perfectly at liberty to say. So I think they were pressing him on that because they wanted to see. He said he changed his mind, but he hadn't said how much. And so I think that's why they focus on things he said when he wasn't a politician, because now that he is, it's kind of important to people whether he still believes that or not.
Yeah, people often confuse the BNP with the EDL, the English Defence League. I can understand why, because, you know, they're basically white supremacists, aren't they? And you know, they're trying to bring about political change. And for some reason, I think that in both parties, it's become more acceptable for other people to be black or Sikh or Hindu, but just not Muslim. You can be anything as long as you're not a Muslim.
You made a good point. When you said the BNP are not officially a racist party, they're not officially a racist party anymore. What they actually did was, if you go and look at their manifestos or stuff they was doing pre-2005, it was all about race. It was about blacks, Asians, immigrants. It was all about race. And then what happened was, then you had the 7th of July bombings in London. And then at that moment, Nick Griffin made a decision. It was a brilliant, on his part, it was a brilliant political move to say, right, we're not going to talk about race anymore. We're not going to say race. We're not going to say immigrant. We're going to say Muslim. We're not going to say immigration. We're going to say Islamification. Because ultimately, it's, you know, you say to someone in the West, think of a Muslim. They'll think of a brown guy with a beard wearing the funny outfit. And they'll think of someone like Abu Hamza. or someone like Andrew Chowdhury, and so they could get away with using the same rhetoric and basically tapping into that same part, that same sort of prejudice, but without actually doing it. And of course, they've now got a Sikh member. They've got the BNP has a member who's a Sikh. He was like their token, their tufa, who they got in, who they had to get in after they were sort of made. There was a law that said they had to allow non-whites to join, and so they had to get one guy in, and they got this Sikh geezer in. And so they're not officially racist anymore, but they've only not been officially racist since about 2005.
The thing is if they're against immigration in general, open borders with Europe and so on, then I haven't looked at the statistics, but I'd imagine with freer borders with the east of Europe now, that probably a very high percentage of immigrants coming into the UK are white Christians. So if you're just generally against immigration, I suppose it's technically incorrect to say that that's a racist policy. If you're white, I mean, you'd actually have to literally be a Pakistani Muslim MP to be racist if you're against immigration.
I mean, the thing is, it's kind of the thing. This is why I kind of like the Polish immigration thing, because it's like reading the Daily Mail. It's like the Polish immigration thing really fucked racists off, because Polish people look like us, and so you can't tell just from looking at them what they like, where they're from and stuff like that. And so that's why that sort of stuff really confuses them. Whereas it was much easier back when everyone immigrated to this country, or they were like, they were Indian or Pakistani or from the Middle East or whatever, or even from the African nations, the Northern African nations. And so it's not that they're not against that, but it's just, I think a lot of them have just given up. I think this is what the EDL was. The EDL was a progression from the BNP, right? We're going to still be intolerant, but we're going to really focus our intolerance into one area. And we're going, because like the EDL are very pro-Israel and pro-Zionist, and they're very sort of Jew-friendly and stuff like that.
But were they always?
Which of course is...
I mean, why not? Okay, if they started out as a generally racist party, why not just go ahead and go for the anti-Jewish vote as well? I mean, why be so selectively racist? Are you still there? I'm not that familiar with the BNP. I don't have a single British acquaintance who doesn't just rage about how much they despise them. But it just seems so bizarre that people would be, just flip a coin and be racist, or excuse me, be prejudiced against either Jews or Muslims, one or the other.
Well, the thing is, the thing you got to remember about. The thing I would say is, and this is actually something Nick Griffin actually said in an interview. They toned down. First of all, we've got to say these conspiracy theories about Jews, like Jews own the media, Jews run the governments, Jews control the banks, and all this other stuff. They believe all this stuff, and so Nick Griffin actually said in an interview, and he said that you have to focus more on the Muslims, because if you focus on the Jews, you're never going to get anywhere in the media. The media and the press are not going to give you a hearing. So you have to focus on just one group. And I think also the other thing is, and the EDL, I think, that's why they tap into that area as well. The EDL tap into the sort of very pro-Jewish idea, because they think that by supporting the Jews, they're going to have all these people like in the media and in government behind them. And of course, we all know that that's not the case. Most Jews fucking hate the EDL. They do have some Jewish support from some various nutters, but other than that, they've got to play. They're basically just playing the game. Is what it is. They're not sort of. It's not that they're anymore. They just their stereotypes and their prejudice of Jews is a lot more positive than that of Muslims.
Yeah, I think what they're doing is they're doing what a lot of people do when, if you get a time of recession, just alienate the people that are the least popular at the time. Everything's their fault. You know, like World War One, the Germans only lost because the Jews did stuff, because the Jews were the least popular at the time. And then, you know, with the terrorism that happened early 2001, back in 2001, early part of the decade, then you hit a recession, and there's so many mindless people that will just turn on the people that they see as the most different from themselves. I just don't understand it. I mean, if I had it my way, I would chuck lots of groups of people out of the country, but there'd be all the people that couldn't be asked to work and think that people who work should be paying tax so that they can sit on their arse and watch telly all day. So those are the people I'd kick out.
So their position, and I really wonder whether it changed at the same point in time that they shifted after the 7/7 bombings. Their position is that evil Jews control the world, and they're fine with that?
No, it's not that they're fine with it. It's just they don't want to talk about it, because by talking about it, he damages his opportunity or his chance of getting anyone, of being getting in the news or everything. But I mean, he still was. I mean, Nick Griffin refers to the EDL as a Zionist-funded front organisation. Now, I think if the best the Zionists can do is the EDL, there's not much to fucking worry about. But it's not that they don't. They still have all these vile opinions of Jewish people, but they just don't talk about them. You know, it's just one of those things they keep on the quiet because they feel they've got to.
And then, of course, if they alienate everyone at the same time, they'll just be this pathetic little nobody party, which they already are. But they aspire to be more than a nobody party, so they need people to back them up. So,
well, to their credit, I mean, to his credit, I mean, this is why I said that the changing of language in their policies from focusing away from race and such, and talking about and focusing it just on one particular group, being Muslims, it worked, because from 2005 to 2008 they grew up to about, they were getting, I think they got in 2008 local elections, they got 250,000 votes, and they won 2 European seats. They've only got one left now, because the other guy, Andrew Bronze, who was the other European seat, has left the party under much bitterness and drama, as you can imagine. And so it worked for a brief period. But the problem is with a lot of this, it's why the EDL have started to fade out, is because people get to the point where they're like, okay, what are you going to do? How are you going to do this? And what are you going to do about it? And people just see that they're not doing anything. They're just shouting and screaming about it, and that doesn't really get you anywhere.
I think they've taken it further than that, though, haven't they? I've not seen them openly criticise Muslims, but they're even more guarded. They don't even just say the problem is Islam. They say the problem is creeping Sharia and Muslim extremists.
And stealth jihad is the other wonderful little paranoid phrase.
Oh, I haven't heard of that one.
That's actually Pat Condell's favourite, that one. He's used creeping Sharia before, but he also likes the term stealth jihad, which he reserves for organisations like CARE. They're a stealth jihad organisation.
So what's stealth jihad then? Hitting someone on the back of the head with the bar and running off?
Yeah, I mean, it's basically, it's funny that it's stealth jihad. It's like that's so stealthy that all these people have figured it out. Stealth jihad and creeping Sharia are essentially the same thing. It's just basically it's the double-edged. It's how you make Muslims not win, because if they don't take part in society, if they don't join in with our way of life, they're not integrating, and if they do integrate, they're infiltrating. That's the kind of sort of spin that these organisations put on it. And the thing is, Tommy Robinson slips up, as do most EDL members, in that he's very careful when he's on telly to only say extremist Islam and stuff like that. But the problem is, he also defines all Muslims as extremists simply through being Muslim. And so he's fighting only extremists, but he views them all as extremists. And there is one guy who is allegedly, I say, a Muslim, who's a member, who's this fucking insane Glaswegian guy who was recently banned from Rangers Football Club for some sort of anti-sectarian chanting. I mean, they're just happy to have any nutter on their side, I think. But yeah, he's very careful, but unfortunately, he all too often says things that are obviously... I mean, the official EDL Twitter account, about 5 months ago, tried to start a hashtag trend for wacky bashing. Now, you don't do... That's the official EDL Twitter account. Now, you don't do that if all you're interested in is... Tommy Robinson recently tweeted out, a couple of weeks ago, he tweeted out, what do you call a Pakistani who doesn't smell? As if. Which is just so fucking... I was hearing that's a sort of playground joke that you hear. Do you know what I mean? And so, when I see stuff like that, I'm like, this is them this is their little real agenda seeping through.
Well, now, hang on. When we're flippant about the thought of, the conquest of the world at the hands of Islam and Sharia courts, springing up, I mean, it comes down, from our perspective, to just the lack of the ability of that to realistically happen due to logistics. You know what I mean? If you have a country where 2% or fewer are of a Muslim background, then realistically their chances of pulling it off aren't very good. But let's face it, it's not for lack of Muslim public figures who openly fantasize about that kind of thing.
Oh, absolutely. I totally agree. The difference, I'd say, is this is the weird thing. There's this, and I probably no one will agree with me on this, but there's this idea in the UK that we're soft on Islam, or dealing with fundamentalist Islam. And what was interesting is I was doing a bit of research into this, and basically, I mean, your primary sort of arch Muslim, sort of fundamentalist Muslim in this country is Anjem Choudary. He's the guy. He's the EDL's best promotion. He's almost universally despised by. He's got like a gang of a few dozen fucktards who follow him around. It was actually funny. I was watching a YouTube video of Anjem Choudary and what was then Islam for UK having a march in I can't remember where the fuck it was, but they were having a march. And I looked at the time signature on the video, and the video was filming. And as the video started, it was they were coming in to the right from the right of the screen, the start of the procession. And from the time it took the start of the procession to get to enter the right of the screen, for it to leave the left side of the screen, took 32 seconds. And that's how few people... You could literally get up, go for a piss, and come back and not know they've walked past your fucking house.
Well, that's another example of you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. If you walk at normal speed, your party's too small. But if you walk really slowly, then it's creeping Sharia.
Fucking bastard.
If you'd like to join us on the show, just send a Skype contact request or message to the Gin and Tonic Show on Skype. You can discuss what we're discussing now, whatever it is. I couldn't tell you if you asked me. Or you can come up with a topic of your own. Also, like with the previous guest, well, not guest, but messenger, I'll read your comment on the air if you're shy or if you just have a one-off question. Also, I scan the chat occasionally for any question I think is worth it. But really quick, but really, doesn't it just come down to the lack of a larger voter base? I mean, you look at what happened in the Belgium election, and in neighborhoods where there were large Muslim populations, this party won hands down, even though nobody knew anything about it. They just put "We're the Islam Party" on the ballot, and bada bing, bada boom, they win. I mean, that is alarming, especially when their platform is alternately horrifying or cryptic. When you read, I mean, I actually before the show I tried to get on the website for the Belgium Islam Party, and they have it sort of blocked. You have to have a username and password already, but they don't allow you to register. I mean, that's a little creepy, and I can't imagine that the average voter knows anything about them because they won't say. It's like way back in the day when we had Hums and Sources on, and it was just like pulling teeth trying to get him to admit what his position is. I mean, that's a little suspicious right off the bat, and it just goes to show. I know it's a very tender subject to say that mainstream average Muslims are in any way either supporting conservative to extreme or not doing enough about conservative extreme forms of Islam, but it really seems like they just saw Islam on the ballot and said, good enough for me, even though, I mean, and this goes for a lot of voters. A lot of people vote for candidates that they don't, or parties that they don't really understand their positions, but it just seems like if they had the sufficient numbers, they'd have the appropriate numbers of seats.
I think the problem that I think the reason that you just sort of touched on a reason why I have very little doubt that this is doomed to failure is the fact that people ultimately are not going to vote, or people can become very apathetic. It's easy to roll people up and get people on your side if they think you're going to fight on their behalf. This is what happened with the English Defence League. When they started, they were doing marches and getting 3,000-4,000 people turn up. Nowadays, they struggle to get fucking over 50. And it's because people have realised, you know what, it's like, this is not going to work. And the problem also is, when you're a political party, the more secretive you are, the less likely you have of getting anywhere with it. Unfortunately, I don't know enough about Belgium. I did have one guy on my Facebook who's from Belgium, and he said he said that in Belgium on the news, nobody was talking or gave a shit about this Muslim party. They were all talking about the sort of the far right party, which got a exceedingly huge number of votes in the places they run. And so, unfortunately, because I don't know enough about Belgium or what it's like in Belgium, I wouldn't be too. I'm not too sure. In fact, in this country, Muslims are in voter-wise, I think Muslims are sort of quite underrepresented in the voting numbers, and you've got and this is the thing. I mean, I think if I knew more about Belgium, it'd help you. The fact that Islam for UK and Anjem Choudary fail. I mean, they march in predominantly Muslim areas. They go and campaign, and they get fucking nowhere. I mean, they just. So I think there's obviously a very big cultural divide there going on in Belgium that I think's making Muslims. I actually know, interestingly, funny story. I know quite a few people in my life who have voted for the BNP on the same basis that you just described. I think a lot of people do that. Unfortunately, I know a lot of people who just they went to the ballot box and there was a picture of a Union Jack and a rose. It said British National Party, and they voted for it. And unfortunately, if you don't know anything about it, you might vote for it once, but I voted Conservative once. Do you know what I mean? We all make fucking bizarre mistakes and stuff like that. But like I said, I think it's about the number, and the more secretive they are, the more. And also, they haven't got the media on their side, and they haven't got any big business that are going to support them or funding. So they're going to get, even if they started progressing, there would be it would be so difficult. Their image would just be tainted too much for them, I think, to get anywhere with it personally. That's what I suppose where I stand, right?
So going back to earlier then, it's not that Tommy Robinson is necessarily has got anything about Muslims. He's just opposed to all of them. Essentially,
yes. I mean, he says he's not, but what he talks about...
It's not because they're Muslims, but they're all his enemy.
I think the problem... This is what I've said. I mean, every EDL march has to be... they have to sort of contact the police. So it has to be... It's a matter of public record. That when their marches are, you can look up when their marches are. And my argument's always been, if I was a Muslim extremist living in the UK and I wanted to blow up something, all I would have to do is look, right, that weekend, the EDL are marching in Coventry and Norwich. I'll go blow up Middlesbrough and Essex. You know, that's all you'd have to do, because there'd be no one there. They wouldn't be marching there. Or if they the following week they're in Newcastle and Plymouth I'll go blow up Wolverhampton and Chatham. I mean, but it never happens. I mean, it just like I said, the only one you've really got is Anjem Choudary. What's interesting is going back to a point I mentioned age ago about the UK being soft on Islam. Since 1986, I think I have trouble pronouncing this name, but it's the it sort of stems from a book called the Al Muhajirun, I think is how you pronounce it, is the sort of network that started it back in 1986. And since 1986, and that's where Muslims Against Crusaders, the guys who burnt the poppy 2 years ago, stem from, Islam for UK and Sharia for UK, all these previous organisations, every single one of them has been banned by the UK government within a year of their creation. And to me, it's like, that's not an organisation that's soft. That's not a country that's soft on Islamic extremism. That sounds to me like a country who takes it very seriously, and these organisations are all end up getting banned. I mean, it's not the EDL, and I wouldn't want the EDL to be banned, or the BNP to be banned, or the National Front to be banned, but it's not them that's getting banned. And if they were sort of, if organisations like the far right groups, if they were prescribed and made illegal as often and as frequently and as easily and quickly as the Islamic groups, they'd have a lot more to fucking moan about. As it is, they're allowed to still freely march and protest, and they're still moaning about being censored and persecuted.
I think the problem with banning political point of views, even if they're crap, is that there are so many people that really don't know what they want from life, and they really want to have a cause of some kind. And as soon as they see the big bad government is banning this poor little party, they'll think, oh, there's something going on here, I'll have to go and support them to try to even it out a bit. And they will get more support from being banned. And I think, going back to Tony Robinson of the EDL, I do think he's a racist. I mean, he doesn't do himself any favours. He'll like do a documentary about how he's not a racist, and then he'll let them film him on the back of a bus shouting down to some Asian guy, "I bet your mum's got a moustache." I mean, you're not going to get away with that. And then another member of the EDL, he was like convincing this documentary he wasn't a racist, and he kept going on the phone going, "Yeah, come round, yeah, come round now." And whoever it was on the phone saying, "I don't want to," he said, "Yeah, come on." And then like this mixed race girl turned up, and he's just kind of standing there going, see. It's like, see what? You know. And but as for Britain being soft on people like Anjem Choudary, I don't think they should be banning things like Muslim for UK, because, as I said, it will bring more attention to them and more people will want to support them. If they didn't ban them, most people would never have heard of them. I
mean, also you have the thing, they just sort of, all that happens is next year there'll be a new group under a different name with a different front man, and it'll be the same, and they'll get banned, and that it's kind of like whack-a-mole, whack-a-Muslim. That's basically what it is. It's they just crop up under a different name, and then they get. I mean, the Muslims Against Crusaders, which is the last organisation of the Al Mujahideen network to get banned, was actually banned. They were threatened because in 2011 they caused a stir when they burnt that giant poppy on Remembrance Sunday, which led to Tommy Robinson getting arrested because he headbutted a policeman, which was probably not the smartest thing he's done. And what was interesting is they said they were going to do it again. And they said, like, this Remembrance Sunday, we're going to go out and burn another poppy. And that's what got them banned, was the fact that they threatened to do that. Now, to me, it's like, these people, I actually nearly ended up having a debate in London with the guy who's the head of the other, Choudary the Younger, whatever it is, the other guy from Muslims Against Crusaders. But his reasons for doing so for burning the poppy, were so fucking ludicrous. It was like they were trying to bring attention to the war crimes of the West and the UK and American governments in Middle Eastern countries and Muslim countries. I'm like, well, why don't you show pictures and talk about stuff that they've done instead of it's a lot more effective than going out there and just offending an entire group of an entire country and pissing everyone off.
Well, no, because if they'd stood there with pictures of slaughtered children, people would walk past, look at it and go, "Oh, that's disgusting," walk off and think, shame, inevitable part of war, and that was the last you would have heard of it. But if you burn a poppy, you're on the news. There you go.
Unfortunately, you're not on the news for the reasons you want to be, and no one's going to listen to you. They're like, fuck this guy. You know what I mean? They're like, fuck this guy. I don't give a shit what he's got to say.
But people will think, well, why have they done that? And they'll say, well, for every soldier that you're killing, that you're saying is the Taliban, you're shooting 5 children or whatever they want to say the statistics are. From burning the poppy, he will get invited onto news night. He will get invited onto news outlets throughout the world and asked, oh, you're the controversial group that burned the poppy, why did you do that? And then he can say, there's this many children being killed, this many women, this many innocent civilians, and then he gets to say it on various platforms throughout the world. He gets to say it to millions of people, whereas if he stood there with a sign, he'd have probably had, 50 people see it? Most people wouldn't even have bothered looking. So really, he did the right thing, I think. To get him, for his cause, burning the poppy was the right thing. Personally, I don't see the problem with burning a poppy, unless, of course, you need a permit to have a fire in a public place during an event. Then it could have been done for not having a licence.
I agree. I don't have a problem with him doing it. I have a problem with it from a stance that every time something like that happens, I'm like, right, now every far-right group, the BNP, the National Front, the EDL, the EVF, the RVF, the MPA, the fucking, the fucking mad loony society, whatever one you want to name, all of them now have got a nice little set. It's like, those pictures, that picture of those 6 or 7 Muslim protesters who have got that banner saying, like, those who insult Islam, behead those who insult Islam, or freedom go to hell and stuff like that. How many times has that been reproduced in a video? It's like that fucking tennis girl scratching her ass poster. It's like everywhere you look at any corner, that's it. And it happened like it was 6 guys 7 years ago in that project, and it still to this day gets trotted out and used. And I sit there and go, right, now they've just got another fucking thing. I mean, these organisations, unfortunately, they're the best adverts for each other. The best recruitment tool for Anjem Choudhury or in fundamentalist Islam are people like Tommy Robinson and Nick Griffin, and the best recruitment tool for the EDL and the BNP are Anjem Choudhury and Muslims Against Crusaders and Abu Hamza and all these other fuckers. They need each other. They exist to try and destroy each other, and yet they need each other to fucking exist in the first place.
I want to make something clear. It's probably something to do with my accent. The people in question burned poppies, the flower, not poppies, infant dots. Okay, there wasn't a little bonfire of poppies on it. That would have been absolutely terrible. I'd have definitely objected to that. I don't know if they'd have been on more news stations or less, I don't know.
Oh, if they burned popper and olive oil as well, put them both on there, and wimpy, and
some kittens. No, you wouldn't get Muslims burning kittens, because Muhammad liked cats. But, actually, it's not that far-fetched, because dogs are one of the cursed animals of Islam. So, if you say, this Muslim extremist group were burning puppies. It's like, well, Muhammad didn't like dogs. But anyway.
I don't think it's like Muhammad liked cats. I think he just lived in a country where they were fucking everywhere, so he had very little choice in the matter, to be honest with you.
But actually, on the subject of puppies and intolerance, some people just like to hate other groups of people, and they look for whatever reasons they can find to hate them. In Birmingham, there was a story going around, one of these Facebook stories, something terrible that's happened. And the story was that the people who collect money for, I don't know if everyone, Atheismo, are you aware of what we're talking about when we talk about poppies?
No, it's not on my radar.
I don't know what other countries they do it, but one of the later battles in World War II was for, I think it was somewhere in France, in a field full of poppies.
Moles. It was based on a poem as well by Maul Flanders and like that.
So it's become a symbol of the tragedy of loss of life of World War II. and around the month of November especially, you get people selling poppies, and the proceeds go to charities to support the deceased's family, people injured, and so on and so on throughout various wars. It's done in November because it's the Armistice Day, it's called, isn't it? The 11th of the 11th at 11 minutes past 11, just to make it easy to remember. And so if you buy a poppy, the money benefits service people, military service people, and if you burn a poppy, you're insulting the military service people. So that's what it's all about, burning poppies and so on. There's this story in Birmingham that the people who were collecting money for the poppy charity were told they can't collect in the city centre because it would offend, in quotes, certain minorities, end quotes. And I just thought this just looks like crap, because from the number of Muslims I've talked to in my life, I have never ever heard anyone say anything along the lines of hating Poppy Day and its crusades and what have you. And I just thought this sounds suspiciously made up. It was a guy from school that I haven't seen him for many years, but he was from school, and he put it up. Repost this if you think it's disgusting. So basically they were saying, so that we don't offend Muslims, we're not allowed to sell poppies on Poppy Day. And so you do a bit of research, and it turned out what actually happened was Birmingham City Council do licenses for charities each week for specific weeks, and only one license will be granted for each individual week. And the Royal Legion were late in applying, and someone else had beat them to it, and it was Oxfam. So the reason the Royal Legion couldn't collect money is because Oxfam already had the licence. They apologised to the Royal Legion and said, sorry, but you were late, Oxfam had got it. And then Oxfam heard that they'd nabbed it off the Royal Legion during November, said, sorry, we weren't aware of this, you have the licence, and gave it back to them. And I wrote to this guy from school, said to him, this is the true story behind it. And he said, I don't care, I'm leaving it up. It's like you're leaving up this information so that people hate people.
It's one of those...
happen. And,
it's one of those bizarre sort of stories that gets trotted out a lot. It's like the thing about, you can't say blackboard anymore, or you can't call it a black bin bag, because it's like, and it's most of these things are fucking made up. And it's like my favourite one, and being from Birmingham, you'd know this one. Is every year Winterval. Is every year.
I thought you was going to say the one about the Muslim school banning the letter P in the phonetic alphabet. P is for pig. I hear that one. Yeah. A is for apple, B is for ball, P is for pig. And it was on the news that the Muslims had complained and they wanted pig changed because it was offensive to them. And then the local news reporters went to the school and they were interviewing the parents, trying to find a parent that was offended by it so they could ask them why. And they couldn't find anyone. They were like, go up to this a man and a woman with this little kid and say, oh, we hear that the parents here are offended by the word pig in the phonetic alphabet. And they say, are they? Why?
Yeah,
it's offensive to you Muslims. And they're like, is it?
For those who don't know, I'll tell you the Winterval thing. What Winterval is, many years ago, I think it was like, fucking God knows, 6, 7, maybe 10 years ago, in the Midlands, I think it was Birmingham, they had a winter festival for for Christmas and that, and they had a sort of multi-faith festival where everyone could join in, and they called it Winterval. This got turned by the Daily Mail into this big fake story that they've banned Christmas now. You can't fucking have Christmas in Birmingham now in case a fucking Sikh gets pissed off about it. And it's just like, and every year this gets trotted out that you can't celebrate. And you see the war on Christmas stuff in America. And what's funny is last year the EDL said they were going to march in every town that's banned Christmas. And we're like, well, you're not going to march anywhere then. No one's banned Christmas, you fucking lunatics. And that was, so that gets tried out every year.
So because they were going to march everywhere where the word Christmas was banned, they didn't get to march anywhere, so they just called it a holiday period.
Yes, exactly.
It's the holiday.
Really quick, a couple things. First of all, someone posted a link to hadith. This is from the Sunan of Abu Dawood, narrated in Jabir ibn Abdullah. It says, this is what we're talking about, ties into two things we were talking about before. The Prophet of Allah, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, ordered to kill dogs, and we were even killing a dog which a woman brought with her from the desert. Afterwards, he forbade to kill them, saying, confine yourselves to killing the type which is black. That's given the grade of Sahih by Sheikh Al-Albani. So, I don't know if he's a sheikh, but he's a well-known scholar. I don't know if that's an appropriate title for him. So yeah, at first he wanted all dogs dead, then just killed black dogs.
Oh, that's pretty sad.
But he's not racist.
Wait, hold on.
It's only the extremist black ones.
But whilst that's bad, whilst racism is bad, surely only killing the black dogs is better than killing all of them. Could we not argue? Can we not argue that by being racist against dogs, he was actually being more moderate in his dog killing?
Yeah, I can't argue against that.
No, I'm just far too uncomfortable with that joke. that's too much. I can't sit here. I have to just, for the record, voice my objection to that. You know, the idea that it's okay to kill some dogs because they're black is just as bad as killing all dogs because they're dogs. You know, I think it's just as bad. All right, you don't kill as many dogs, so the damage overall might not be as bad. But yes, it is morally it's still as bad.
Okay, and someone has also written with this question: why do you think Muslims are more integrated in the U.S. and here in Canada than in Europe and Australia? Did everyone hear?
I don't know anything about Muslims being integrated in the US at all.
Okay, well, Klingschor has a comment. And he has to make up for lost time.
I do, sorry, my alarm just didn't work. I'm really sorry. The reason is simply that in Australia and in America, most of the immigrants actually they weren't refugees. They were actually like middle class people or whatever who actually moved there, as a profession, so doctors, lawyers, so on and so forth, and people who were, maybe they weren't necessarily super wealthy, but they were people with professions. They weren't just lower class cheap labor, which is where most of the European Muslims came from. So they tended to be better off, and they were tended to be able to integrate easier, and that's why generally, particularly in North America, Muslim communities tend to be more well integrated. I mean, of course, you do have some areas where they are extremely lower class and where integration has not been successful, or where Salafis have infiltrated or whatever, and things are more hostile and integration has been less successful. But generally speaking, the integration was more successful in North America because people were economics.
I think it's more simple than that. I think it's simply because in England we've got smaller gardens.
You're not taking this seriously, Rationalizer.
No, it's because we've got smaller gardens. Let me explain. In America, right, the thing I noticed when I went to New Hampshire was the gardens were so big that it took 15 minutes to walk to the end of the road, and it wasn't a motorway or anything, it was just a road, like 15 minutes, and I'd only walked past about 8 houses, and then they're so far apart. Now, in the UK, you do get areas such as Bradford where they form ghettos. When you've only got 8 houses in a 4 square mile radius, you can't have a ghetto. There's only like 6 people living there, so they have to integrate because otherwise they will never get to see anyone. So all we need is bigger gardens in the UK, and everyone will integrate just as well as in America.
Yeah, the Bronx is a myth. There are no ghettos in America. It's
Yeah, but that's just one of the problems, isn't it? It's that, you know, in the Bronx the gardens are small, but
yeah.
the Muslims can't move into there because there's lots of black people there, and they won't integrate with the Muslims, so the Muslims won't move in. It's
This is the Rationalizer's plea to solve Islamophobia. Bigger fucking gardens. Form the bigger garden party. We want at least half an acre of gardens each, and you'll eliminate all bigger. Here's the thing, though. The idea that Muslims don't integrate as well is very dependent on what statistics you read. I did a video a little while back, which was actually a response to Aly Aly's speech that she gave, called The Advocates.
Was that the one you sent me?
Yes, that was the one I sent you. And in it, I listed off a load of statistics and studies and research that actually suggest otherwise, that Muslims on the whole, or as a majority, actually feel more comfortable, feel more at home.
Hear you clear.
Yes, Jay. I've brought on another guest. This is Jay. Thank you for joining us.
Hello,
what do you have for us today? The topic is, well, I mean, you can come up with your own topic, but the topic of today is tolerance. Are you still with us, Jay?
I wouldn't put it past Oliver to be ringing, but you know.
No.
No, you know how Oliver always comes on and trolls, and I always spot him straight away because I think he's crap, right? Well, I reckon that Coughlan could easily come on and troll, pretending to be Oliver, pretending to be a Brummie.
You think I'm sat here in front of a camera and I've somehow managed to throw my voice electronically over the internet into another Skype account via another computer?
Sorry,
No, I'm just saying that when you do your Brummie accent, it sounds exactly like Oliver failing doing a Brummie accent. Brilliant.
Okay, we've got Jay back. What do you have for us today? Can you hear me?
I suspect Jay might not.
Sorry, I got disconnected, guy.
That's fine. Have you been following us? Do you know what we're discussing? Wow, I think we're having a lot of lag.
Jay, have you muted your audio on the website, on the Blog TV website? Because if you're listening to us on the Blog TV website, you're not hearing what we're saying until about 20 seconds after we've said it. Just wait 20 seconds.
Yeah. This is the best part. Longest 20 seconds of my life. Jay, if the technical difficulties can... Oh, okay, she dropped again. I'm going to have to remove her because it's not good television.
Can I just go back to what we're talking about
yes.
integration?
Is this the thing about how... Sorry. Is this thing about how Muslims actually feel more British than British people?
Well, I don't think it's more British than British people, but a lot of them, in the studies I used or found, they felt more at home in Britain and it wasn't more than British people. It was
# creeping Sharia.
Yeah, it was just that the statistics showed that that there was a slight higher percentage. This was done by the University of Essex. This study, but also I think that it depends a lot as well on where you are and what time. I'm sure during the whole Ground Zero mosque thing, that fucking fiasco that happened a couple of years ago, I'm sure there are a lot of Muslims in New York who didn't feel like they didn't feel like they belonged, so to speak, or they were certainly made to feel a lot more unwelcome than maybe they had done before, and certainly through the whole burn a Quran fiasco that followed that whole shit fest of bots.
Here's the problem. Here's the problem with both what Aly Aly said and your response to it, is that nobody seems to have anything close to an objective metric for how integrated someone is or what that even means.
But the problem is I had with Aly Aly's speech that Coughlan responded to was that it was an absolute clusterfuck. She insinuated things, and she just made these really stupid connections, and it wasn't even clear what it was just an absolutely terrible speech. Like, it was so disappointing. I used to respect her.
I think the problem I had, my only problem I had with the speech is I wouldn't have minded if she'd cited examples of what she was talking about, but she didn't. She just gave this mystical group a name, the Advocates of Silence, and then talked about what this group want and what their agenda is. And I'm like, well, that's all well and good if you're playing to a bunch of people who are already on your side. But to someone like me who sat here reading this, it just sounds like the paranoid ramblings of a nutter. And I agree with you, actually, Aly Aly, and I want to clarify something. When I sort of used my statistics on the studies I used, it wasn't to prove that Muslims, I wasn't saying, look, these studies prove that Muslims are more integrated or are more connected with British society. What it was to show is that if you read, it's like all statistics, if you're reading the right statistics, you can prove anything. And the statistical data that people use to show that Muslims don't integrate in the British society and that Muslims don't like Britain is no more or less valid than the ones I used to sort of prove that showed otherwise. It just depends on how you look at it. It depends what you're trying to find. So that's kind of what I was going for with that. I realise a lot of people thought I was just trying to say, look, everything's fine, calm down. And that wasn't it, really. I didn't want to go for that.
Well, the thing is, if you have, I don't recall her exact words, but if she's saying, I remember it was relatively mild from my perspective. I didn't listen to the whole speech, but that one statement that you focused on, it seemed relatively benign because she said, if I remember correctly, that, we have to look at why some Muslims aren't integrating well here, something along those lines. And when you look at, for example, a variety of different cliques, not just the hardcore lunatics like Anjem Choudhury, but obviously right off the bat, the value systems of the immigrants and of the native population are out of phase. But that in and of itself isn't a crime or anything close to it. But more to the point, there does seem to be a group, even outside, like I said, the outright loons like Choudhury, there does seem to be a group that see themselves either at odds with the host society or on a mission to change the host society for their own good. Like if you look at the platform of the party that won the 2 councillor seats in Belgium, they come right out and say, look, one of these days, get used to the idea. I mean, it's delusional, but I think it speaks volumes. First of all, that you would come to someone else's country and say, okay, get ready because you are soon going to become a colony for my way of thinking and my way of life.
You know what? I really disagree with this because isn't that what every political party does? Anyone who ever votes for any political party wants to change the running of the country to suit more what they believe would be better.
Not announcing that they will have dominion over people whether they like it or not. Not putting up on their website before it was taken down is Sharia law. Be ready for it and be ready to sacrifice.
Wait. But see, the extreme racist parties do stuff like that. Well, the more extreme parties do, and I would count that as a more extreme party. So, in the context of extreme parties, I can sort of. But I think the thing is though that once again, this is Salafis. I think Salafism is the key here, and it is funded from overseas. It's funded by countries like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, Kuwait, or whatever.
Here's the thing. I'm not advocating a double standard between local lunatics and foreign lunatics, but I'm saying that on the question of integration, it necessarily becomes a double standard because the EDL or BNP are not promoting a party in Egypt, as far as I'm aware, saying one of these days Egypt will be reborn for your own good in our...
Let's get rid of the pyramids.
Yeah, we'll just have to get rid of 99% of the people who live here due to their olive skin. You know, I mean, there's nothing like that.
Here's the thing. I would argue that the local lunatics that we talk about, like the BNP and UDR, I would argue that they are just as non-integrated into mainstream British worldview as these Muslim groups are, because any fringe belief system, and the BNP are, and it's not rhetoric to say this, they are Nazis. They're a Nazi party.
I would say neo-fascist.
Neo-fascist. Well, if you want to be fucking politically correct about it, but the thing is, I'd say that those organisations, those groups, are just as out of touch and unintegrated into mainstream British society as these groups, like you mentioned, the one in Belgium and the other sort of fringe Nazis. And the thing is, it's like we're all trying to. Everyone always, as far as changing the way of life. I mean, you said there, like we will have dominion over you whether you like it or not. And the thing is, because most people would rather not have that, that's why I don't have any problem or fear with these groups getting anywhere. Because the fact is, most people are going to say, just fuck off. You're a nut.
Yeah, and the thing is as well is, we'll have dominion over you whether you like it or not. You have to like it, otherwise you wouldn't get a majority to vote for it.
But doesn't that in and of itself speak volumes? Here's the thing: they would not, the Belgian party would not have won the 2 seats unless they had. I mean, because the Muslim population of Belgium is so small, they would have had to have, it seems to me, overwhelming support amongst what Muslim population exists, and it seems that they just saw Islam party and voted for it, even though if you look at their policies, it's a lot of the things that Belgian Muslims probably left their country of origin to get away from. So
well,
I mean,
in that case, if it is true, let's assume that you're right and that these people just voted for it without really looking into it. If when they actually look into it, they see that this is completely at odds with what they believe, guess what? They won't vote for it next year.
I don't know.
Next year there won't be a vote. Because if you have a caliphate or something, there's no voting going on there. They might be voting in a caliphate. They come in, this Belgian man called Dave is now the new caliph of Belgium. And he says, well, first thing is we don't have elections anymore. But the thing is you can't say we don't allow you to vote for these people because they're different from what the current system is. Because every party is different from what the current system is. Even the party that's in power now, during their next election, will have policies that are slightly different from what the current government is, and it's themselves. And all you do is you say, well, how different can it be before you say we shouldn't tolerate it? Well, it gets to an extreme where in Iraq, everyone used to come out and vote for Saddam Hussein. Because if you voted for anything that didn't agree with the current system, you were probably killed or something. It was unacceptable. People weren't allowed to do it. So Saddam Hussein was always voted in. In the UK, what if you say you can only ever get voted in if you're what's the word? The Greek word. Oh shit! I hate having a brain block. Democratic. You can
Souvlaki.
If you're a democratic party, you can go in. But what if at some point in the future, right, some group of people called the Dibdabs, right? This group of people called the Dibdabs, they don't believe in democracy. They believe in doing whatever the laws of the Holy Squirrel were, and they spread and take over most of the UK. They're 99% of the population because they don't believe in birth control. And then they decide what they want is to live their life with no democracy, no birth control, following the laws of the squirrel. And that's what they want to do. So why? Just because it's always been a democracy in the past, should this majority of people not be allowed to do that? It's a majority want to change the way it is. And I know that I wouldn't want to live in Iran. And if the UK turned into Iran, I wouldn't want to live in the UK. So I'd go somewhere else. I'd go somewhere where they don't want to live like Iran. Yeah, I don't really see the problem. I think that when you start outlawing other parties because they're not the same as the other parties that already existed, it's a bit of a slippery slope fallacy. But
it's interesting that we haven't mentioned it's one party we haven't mentioned, and it's one that I think should be focused on a bit more. Is the UK Independence Party? Because if you look at their manifesto, they've got some pretty fucking bizarre. That they actually want to bring back treason, and for people who they classify as these Islamic hate preachers, they want to bring back treason for these people. So anyone who speaks out, and they claim to be a libertarian party, but if you speak out against the sovereign or the head of state or the government, or you talk about wanting to overthrow it, doesn't matter how much of a fringe kook you are, and you've only got two people who believe in you, and one of them dribbles and eats his own shit. It doesn't matter, that they'll try you for treason, and they also want to use it as well to extradite people into who are terrorist suspects a lot quicker and stuff like that. And that's a pretty and that's before you even get into their actual policies that are not even connected to this. You get into their policies on taxes and science, and they're a fucking lunatic bunch of kooks when it comes to science.
So what I thought was brilliant about the UK Independence Party is I wrote to them once, and it was basically lots of people in the UK wanted to have a referendum to decide if we should be part of Europe or not, but the governments weren't giving this referendum. Yet it was the general opinion that most people in the UK wanted to have this referendum. And I wrote to the UK Independence Party and said, why don't you just have a really simple manifesto, which is, if we are elected, we will have a referendum on whether we're in Europe or we are an independent country, and then we will hold a re-election. And the guy wrote back and said, I don't think we'd be very successful if we were a single policy party. And it's like, your single policy would be the independence of the UK, and you called the UK Independence Party, and you didn't think that was a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, they are based. The thing is, they are a one-issue party in that. But the thing is that they the other thing about them that is, if you're talking about religious nutters taking over, one of their things is to minimise government power and actually give it back to the church and the monarchy. So in essence, the UK Independence Party want to create a more theocratic monarchist society where the government actually has less power, and like the House of Lords has more power, even though the reason they don't want to be part of the EU is because of the unelected bodies making decisions, and they want to give more power to the fucking House of Lords, for God's sake, and they want to give more power to the fucking monarchy, neither of whom are elected, and the church isn't elected either. And this is a party that is been close to taking over as a possibly third party from the Liberal Democrats. That's a bigger concern for me than any sort of minor bunch of Muslim nutters who want to have an opinion on. I mean, I'm going to live under Sharia or some bullshit like that.
Yeah, I think that people like Anjem Choudhury are great because we shouldn't ban them. I mean, maybe the UK government is banning them to make them more prominent because, so few people know anything about the religion at all, including many, many Muslims. Nice. And then you've got people like Anjem Choudhury coming on the TV telling people that if they suck their first three fingers after they've eaten chicken, it'll release special enzymes to help them digest their food. And it's been scientifically proven, and people just think this guy's mad. He must be making this up. And then they'll pick up a few hadith books, assuming, say, they're Muslims. They've been told what their religion is, always accepted it from authorities, say their parents, because they trust their parents. And then Anjem Chowdhury comes out with some crap like, you know, drinking camel wee is good for you or whatever it is he comes up with. And then they think, where's he getting this from? They pick up Sahih Bukhari, they look through it and go, oh my God, this stuff is actually in there. and then hopefully they realise, but a lot of Sharia-based law is founded on the hadiths in things like Bukhari rather than on the Quran itself. You know, the Quran is a lot more sparing of adulterers than the hadiths are, and Sharia law seems to reflect what's written in the hadiths rather than in the Quran. In the Quran, what is it? It's flogging or something, and then in the hadith it's stoning.
A later verse upgrades it to death, though, doesn't it?
No, it doesn't. Nowhere at no point in the Quran is adultery punished with death.
I remember there was the flogging, but I thought that was another one that got upgraded later. Because there's a couple where they have really mixed messages about punishments, and
it says the female adulterer or fornicator. It isn't clear which it is actually, because it's the word simply zina, which could be either. But
wait, it probably is clear if you but anyway.
Actually, no, because it's even unclear because what it says is a woman who commits fahisha, which is indecency. That's not even specifically adultery. A woman who commits indecency, fahisha, should be locked up until she dies. And then this was considered to have been abrogated by the verse 100 lashes. And then, of course, you know, the hypothetical verse of stoning, which was lost, but was still recorded in Sahih Bukhari, is the next step up. But it's not in the actual Quran. I just want to make a quick point, though. I absolutely agree with, I can't remember if it was Coughlan or Rashman who said about the point of local rather than imported extreme political groups or like there are people in my country who like are just as not integrated as, you know, some Salafi cunt from Saudi Arabia. These people, like these disgusting bogan communities who you know beat each other up, and our equivalent of chavs, you know, and they're racist and they're ignorant and they're small-minded and they're crude and horrible and I came from one of these communities. I want them to get out of this country just as much as I want, you know, some caliphate wanting Muslim, you know. So it
all comes down to, when people talk about integration, they're very vague about it because I don't think anyone knows what it actually is. It's one of those terms that gets thrown about and it's open to interpretation. It's kind of like the reason I don't like the term political correctness, because it's totally open to interpretation as to what that actually means, because what people consider political and correct, or correct within politics, is completely subjective. And so what I find politically correct or politically incorrect is going to be completely different to what someone else finds politically correct and politically incorrect. And the word integration, no one ever really defines what they mean by it. And this is in the UK, where the number one selling food is chicken vindaloo. You know, that's the biggest. We eat more curries and takeaways, and we listen to more. You know, our music doesn't come from. Nothing in Britain comes from Britain, because everything in this country's came from somewhere. We're basically like a sort of whistle-stop cafe, in geographical terms. People came over here, raped and pillaged most of it, stayed, left some bits, and fucked off, and that's how it's always been. And so the term integration, I have no idea. I think if someone if someone just comes up here, does a job, gets on with their fucking life, they don't cause any bother. They can believe whatever fucking shit they want beyond that point. They're integrated at that point for me. The fact that they look different, or worship or have a minority religion, or dress funny, or listen to different music, or sell and eat food that's a bit unusual, or occasionally talk in their native tongue, to me is not an aspect of integration that I'm concerned with.
I think
Okay,
the
I
way
have to, wait, allow me to interject as a counterpoint, Rash, really quick.
I just want to say one thing because it's
Okay.
about curry. It's about curry and integration. If white people mainly eat curry, they're multicultural. But if Asian people mainly eat curry, they're not integrated.
Well, I mean, in all, nobody really cares about what they eat. A couple of things. First of all, what Coughlan and Klingschor said about local versus imported misfits, or people who aren't integrated. Isn't that a non seq? I mean, not a non sequitur, but isn't it a non-statement? If you have domestic problematic individuals, why would you want to import more if you had the choice? And on top of that, since I think have all acknowledged that the foreign and domestic extremists polarize each other, energize each other, give each other strength, isn't that more of a reason to keep them separate?
Can I say you're making the first problem up here is you're naturally assuming on that point that all Muslims who are acting out are necessarily foreigners. The guys who committed the 7th of July terrorist attacks all had British passports. Anjem Chowdhury is
No,
British.
that's not what I'm talking about. I'm not saying they're foreign as in first generation immigrants. Okay?
See, the problem isn't that the people there. The problem, the Salafi ideology has been pumped into these communities.
Right.
And that's the problem here. So it would just be like if I don't know. Well, anti-Muslim bigotry has been pumped into certain elements of the community here as well. Like it's an ideology that has come in from the frickin' States or from Europe, you know, or just exactly the same as Salafism has come in. So in both cases, it's kind of a foreign ideology or a foreign belief system. So either way, I mean, I don't want any. I don't like maggots, you know, so to speak. Like I don't like these.
The problem also is not so much that a certain form of lunacy exists, whether it's foreign or domestic, if you want to define it that way. The problem is how do you stop that from happening? I mean, these days with the internet, radicalisation, if you look at any sort of, because obviously I'm friends with Riff Randall, and Riff knows a lot about this stuff, and he's shown me studies and stuff like that show that radicalisation in all forms, whether we're talking religious or ideological, philosophical, whatever, it takes place on the internet. It doesn't take place. It doesn't take place in society anymore, because like the internet is where you find radical people, because radical people don't fit into normal society. So the problem is these ideas aren't necessarily being the result of foreigners coming over here. These ideas are, you know, even if it's like these people who want to ban the Quran. So I've got the fucking internet. If I want to read the pissing Quran, I'll go online. You're not going to ban. You're not going to get rid of something by simply stopping the person from being there, because with things like the internet these days, and with everyone being sort of like online and being able to talk to each other, like we're talking to each other now. I'm on a pissing little netbook, and I've got an Australian, an American, and a guy from Birmingham, and DPR Jones, who's
don't tell everyone where I'm from. Don't tell everyone where I'm from. I'm trying to remain incognito. I don't want everyone just knowing I'm from Birmingham.
He says with a Brummie accent.
I don't want everyone knowing I'm from Birmingham.
I'm not from Australia. Who said I'm from Australia, mate? Put another shrimp on the barbie.
I come from fucking South Africa. So, you know, but that's my thing. The thing is, this is where radicalisation takes place, and I don't think it matters whether these people are from abroad or an idea came in as someone who is a foreigner, because, like I said, a lot of the radicals who have sort of foreign, these radical ideas that are foreign, are ultimately also, you know, they're promoting themselves online. You go on the internet, the EDL are online. You name your extremist group, and they're on fucking line, and that's where people find them.
I've brought another guest, Avi Sheikh. He has a comment, so go for it, Avi. Thank you for joining us.
Hey guys, how's it going?
Good.
So, just wanted to make a comment that I think the best way to deal with radicalism is to support liberals in this sort of liberal and radical divide in the Muslim community, because I think they are doing some good. I think they're publishing some magazines in the UK. I don't know I remember the name, where they sort of stray away from political issues and more, I guess, everyday life sort of issues. So I guess we could support them.
Yeah. In the big paper that I recently wrote on Muslim immigration, that's in the conclusion. That's the most significant thing that I say, and that can actually counterbalance the problems with Muslim immigration is the empowerment of liberal and progressive Muslim groups, and this is actually recommended by the RAND Corporation as well as the best solution to countering violent extremism is the empowerment of liberal and progressive Muslim groups. So I think you've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah, the one group I always focus on whenever I get someone, because I always get people comment on my videos saying, "Look, I want to I'm concerned about Islamic fundamentalism, and I don't want to support someone like the EDL or the BNP because they're just a bunch of fucking racists. What can I do?" And the one I always recommend is the Quilliam Foundation, who are actually headed, who are a UK organisation, government-funded organisation, who are actually headed by a guy whose name I can't, Nazim something or other, it forgets me now. But he's actually an ex-Islamist. He's an ex-fundamentalist.
Yeah, ex-terrorist, I think.
An ex-extremist.
Was he the dude who was in Egyptian prison at one point and was tortured?
I think he was. Yeah, he's still a Muslim. I mean, there's actually a clip of him debating Anjem Chowdhury on Newsnight with Jeremy Paxman, and this is an organisation that actually studies. They're headed by this guy. They study and they actually have programs and things that actually work, and they can show you data and they can show you efforts that they do of how to combat these. And that's an organisation that I would like to see promoted more, and not these fuckers like Robert Spencer on Jihad Watch, or these fucking lunatics like Pamela Geller, or even Gert Wilders. I don't want these.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy.
I want to see people like the Quilliam Foundation, like that. These are the people that need to be. And you can type. I mean, you can, like I said, you can go on a Google and type in Muslims against this, Muslims against Sharia, Muslims against this, Muslims for this, that, and the other. And you'll find these organisations there. They're out there. But the problem is, people get so caught up in that mindset of, no, all religion is bad, and encouragement of any form of religion is bad. And therefore, it's like, well, you're not helping. This is not going to help the problem of Islamic extremism within minority communities. What you need to do is, like Klingschor said, you need to find a way to empower the ones who are actually more reasonable. And a lot of people on the sort of anti-theistic, sort of militant atheist side don't want to do that because they
I admit I fall into that category because I think the whole thing is a complete farce. I think that liberal ideology is wrong, as we pointed out before. Like what Rationalizer was saying, people may, even many Muslims may roll their eyes at some of the crazy statements that Anjem Chowdhury and his ilk make, but they have the liturgical high ground. If you put the lunatic far out people and the moderate liberals on Islamic jeopardy, the most conservative faction would consistently walk away with the most money. They have the liturgical high ground. I think that liberal, non-literal religiosity is garbage. And I mean, look at Christianity, for example. Look at how many centuries of slowly watering that religion down it took to get them to this point, and they are still more powerful than they should be. They're still incredibly violent, obnoxious. It took centuries for us to get them to stop throwing stones at each other.
Do you think there is a possible way you could actually get people from we could have dealt with Christianity in a way that would have, because I think whether moderation is hypocritical or not, I don't give a shit. It's whether it's less problematic for everyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
What I care about. I don't give a shit. If someone take a Christian like someone like Kenneth Miller, who's the biologist. He's a Catholic. He prays with people before he does his speeches on biology. Now, is he more of a hypocrite than, say, Fred Phelps? Possibly. Is he better? Is he a more benefit to society, and is he a less of a problem to society than Fred Phelps, you're damn right he's more of a benefit. And ultimately, there's no way you can there's no solution anyone short of wiping people out or effectively trying to advocate some sort of genocide. There's no way you're going to get from a point, right, we've got religion in this state now. How do we get it to the point where it's watered down and slowly, surely eradicated? There is no quick solution. That you just got to keep at it. And I think the sort of, if you sort of say to the people who have got the watered down, less literal version, go, yes, good, keep coming this way, right, good. Now, and then you're more likely to get there than by simply going, no, fuck all of you out there. Because I don't want to encourage people to be like Andrew Chowdhury. I want to encourage people to be like Hazim from the Quilliam Foundation. I don't want to encourage Christians to be like Fred Phelps. I want to encourage them to be more like Kenneth Miller, or maybe someone like, oh God, I forget his fucking name now. But anyway,
can you guys hear me?
Yeah, I just want to say that I don't think this issue is a sort of ideological or class of civilizations issue. I think it's more of an issue of public policy. We want a sort of mindset in the Muslim community that's acceptable to human rights, democracy, etc. Right?
Yeah. The thing is, can I possibly perhaps strike a compromise between Coughlan's position and Atheismo's position? Because, pardon?
Safe point.
Yeah.
He's having a
conversation.
Okay. Another conversation. No. I mean, obviously, intellectually, I don't agree with the position of the progressive Muslim or the hardcore Muslim, and so I can make it clear. Like, I have progressive Muslim friends, and I say, yeah, I think your ideology is crap, but or even their belief system, crap or inaccurate or not based on facts. By the way, Coughlan, your video is frozen. But I can still support them as a person or as a group, and say, even though I disagree with you, I support you, and I give your group and your initiative, whatever, support and my thumbs up, even though intellectually I may disagree with the position that you hold. You know what I mean? Like, I can live with those people, and so I can, as opposed to, of course, the Salafis or whatever.
I can live with all of them. I can tolerate anyone who isn't breaking the law, because that's what a liberal country like the United Kingdom is about. People have the right to be twats and assholes. And if they want to go around doing that and making themselves unpopular, that's entirely their choice. But if they break the law, then they're in trouble. And I don't care who they are breaking the law, you're not allowed to break the law. So if you're inciting hatred, go out and kill people because they are X, then you're breaking the law and you should get into trouble for it. But if you're saying stuff that's just absolutely ludicrous, that I could never agree with putting a penny in to promote because it's absolute nonsense. Well, if people can find their own funding and can find people to pay to promote utter rubbish, well, that's up to them. It shouldn't be banned. As soon as you start banning people speaking, I mean, that's a really bad sign. As soon as you can't say, as soon as you're not allowed to say what you think, it's only when you're inciting action to do something illegal or doing something illegal that it's a problem. But if you can't say what you think, that's not somewhere I want to live.
Okay, look, here's my thing. When you express outrage or point out the flaws in religious doctrine or the societal model that spins off from it, sometimes you get luck. I mean, it's like a carnival game. Sometimes you get into the 80 point, or sometimes you throw the ball and it gets in the 100, like the Chuck E. Cheese game, where you have the farther you throw the ball, the more points you get, and then there's a consolation if it slides into the gutter, you get fewer points, but you still get something. I would agree that if we just take some random religious person who we disagree with their ideology, or their ideology is problematic for whatever reason, something is better than nothing. But I do, that is, if someone waters down their belief or backs off of it or tempers it somehow, that's better than nothing. but I still aim for the cliche militant atheist, full-blown non-religious goal. That is, every person who deconverts, I think, counts for several of those who watered theirs down, because you still see many of the same problems. There's degrees of moderation, and it seems that if you were to paint a spectrum of people, much like we see in Belgium, or like you see here in the United States quite often, people will support plans and politicians and platforms that they wouldn't really like. Because if you go to a restaurant, I'm on one of my rants. If you go to a restaurant and your food is too salty or too cold, too warm, you send it back. If a family member or someone valuable to you makes you the same dish and it's just awful, you still just eat it and tell them it's delicious. And there is the same trend. I know people don't like that. I know it makes people squeamish to say, oh, well, aren't you just blaming ordinary people for the actions of the extremists? But let's face it, that is the trend. I talk to people here, Christian acquaintances of mine, and they say, well, I'm voting for so-and-so. And I say, well, based on past conversations with you, you disagree with them on every issue they say. And they say, well, at least he's a good Christian man. It is a problem. It is a problem. And, like I said, something's better than nothing. I'd be silly to go for an all or nothing approach, but I do think that unless you express the real outrage, unless you go full blown, balls to the wall, in their face, then nobody will ever be shamed out of their adamant stance, whether it be a partial watering down or a full blown reflection.
I must say, sometimes
I think that's also. Sorry,
let Richard come back, because I'm sure he's more.
I think that's where you and I are going to have to agree to disagree, because I don't want someone to be shamed out of their position. I want them to be reasoned out of it. I want them to sort of come to it through their own understanding. And for me, it's like I think the ultimate thing is I see it as a more realistic goal in my lifetime to aim for just more moderation and to appeal to people, to appeal to people on a human level, where I can say, look, you and I don't agree on this, that, and the other. You have that belief, but we share this, that, and that. And from that basis, we can build on that. And we don't have to be at odds with each other for that, this, that, and the other. And I know from my personal experience, you spoke from your personal experience, I know from my personal experience that is possible to do. And I think you and I just think, you want to use the hammer where I would use a scalpel. Is that it? And for that, and in that sense, I think you and I just have to agree to disagree on that point, because I think that's where that's the value statement that we've
I can agree with both of you, because even though you're actually opposed,
you coward bastard, stand up.
Fuck off, Rash.
Yeah, but no, you're both twats, and I'd batter both of you. But you're still right. First thing I want to say is, sometimes, Atheismo, when you do an analogy, I don't know what you're talking about, but when you do an analogy about your analogy, I just get completely lost. I don't know what you were talking about. 1 minute, I can't even remember the first analogy, but the next minute, my aunt was making my dinner, and I'd come back.
Okay, then allow me to interrupt this and rephrase. Okay?
No, don't do it.
No, stop. My point is, you aim high. You find someone who's of an adamant of a religious position. You hit them hard. You show them what they should be outraged about, what they should be rethinking. And if all they do is water down the position, fine. But it's worth going for the highest possible result, or the optimum result. If you aim low, then what if your approach just isn't good enough? What if it's just too meek? What if you didn't push hard enough? Like, did anyone see or did anyone listen to Aaron Ra versus Ray Comfort not that long ago? Ray Comfort, as he sometimes says, he says, "Oh, I hate religion. I, Ray Comfort, hate religion. Religion does all kinds of bad things." Now, that's a kind of a radical position for someone who is pushing Christianity, but what you see there is someone who has debated with critics of religion who have been so fierce that he has come to realize how weak the case for organized religion would be. So he has actually jettisoned the idea of organized religion. You know what I mean?
What he does is actually very similar to the people who used to be called racist and now call themselves race realist. They realize that calling yourself a racist is not a good thing anymore, and we live in a culture now where or we live in a world where the sort of zeitgeist of society is one where you say religion and people go, oh fuck, and so they go, right, well, let's change it around. That's why they say things like atheism is a religion, because they're trying to sort of flip all the arguments immediately back onto you. And it's the same sort of, it's like the people who say that I'm not anti-Semitic or this, I just don't like I don't like Zionism or so. You know what I mean? It's just semantics on his part, and you're right, it's bullshit. Yeah.
Well, but that's my point. Wait, real quick, Rash. Real quick. My point is that these baselines would not have shifted to the point that they had unless there was real outrage in the first place, unless the moderate middle had been outraged about these phenomena. The reason why this Belgian party now hides their party platform, and you have to be a member, but you can't register in order to see what it is that they actually believe. And the reason the EDL minces words and engages in all these prevarications is because they know that the moderate middle wouldn't stomach it. And the thing is, if you go to some very conservative places, in many parts of the Muslim world, whatever it is that the Belgian Islam Party is marketing, they could probably do it quite openly and no one would care. If you turn back the clock to a more openly nationalistic and racist time in the UK, continental Europe, or the US, you could be openly prejudiced. You could just, with no qualms at all, you could say, this is the race, and this is the group, and this is the religion, and we need to kick all the Chinese out because they're this and that. We would not have shifted the baseline to the extent that we have if we hadn't hit on these issues as hard as we can. So I say, always hit them as hard as possible. You're either, if you can get someone to deconvert, fine. If not, it'll still give them something to think about. I think hit as hard as you can every time. And liberal religiosity is at best a stopgap measure. I can see the point Rash says about my metaphors. Okay, I understand that not everyone goes for metaphors within metaphors, but I watched that one fucking movie too many times.
No! Don't talk about a film.
Inception. I watched Inception one too many times, and it is forever.
Right.
This is Islamception.
Right. It's a false dichotomy. You're arguing about what is the way to argue against theism, and it's crap, because you can't say what is the way that people are made religious. There isn't the way. Religion has all these different hooks. They'll go after people who are alcoholics, drug addicts, give them help. They'll go after people in bereavement, they'll go after people that are lonely, and all sorts of stuff, brainwash children. There are many, many different ways to make someone religious.
Depends on the person, doesn't it?
Very, very many ways to make someone unreligious. Now, your Atheismo saying you've got to go for the hard line, you've got to show them up or whatever, and that's the way you've got to do it. Well, for me, that worked. For me, it was the ridicule of someone saying, do you realise how stupid it is what you're saying, that made me go and look at the facts so that I could come back to them and say, you're wrong, you're the stupid one. But then as I looked at the facts, I realised I was being stupid, and that's what got me out of it, someone taking the piss. Whereas I have a friend who's a Christian, as soon as you say something that's even remotely piss-taking, he'll stop talking to you completely. You will not get through to him at all. But if you can talk to him, I haven't bothered because I don't care what he believes, but if you could talk to him about his religion, he might actually change his point of view slightly. You could talk to a Muslim who believes in all the Bukharis and everything, and you could get them to the position of being a Quran-only Muslim. In my opinion, that's better than a full-on Muslim who wants to stone people and stuff like this, because the Quran doesn't tell you to stone people.
But the question is, do we pull our punches completely with the so-called moderates?
No, you don't.
No, I'm not saying we should pull our punches. What I'm saying is I think each person is different and you have to approach each one differently. Yeah. In my experience, I'll give you an example. I mentioned Kenneth Miller earlier. Kenneth Miller was heavily involved in the Dover trial to get intelligent design into schools. And he testified, and there was an interesting bit afterwards where that was really fascinating, and it was the guy who was on the lawyer who was representing like Kenneth Miller's side, the side of science and evolution, actually spoke to Richard Dawkins. Now, Richard Dawkins is what you would say, I think Atheismo, we can both agree, is one of those balls on parade, in your face kind of guys, and that's fine. But what was interesting is the lawyer spoke to Richard Dawkins and spoke to him about evolution and that, and he said that, you know what, if we brought you up as a witness to testify for us, we probably have fucking lost, because they needed to see what they were all concerned about was whether evolution is in some way indicative of a person's religious beliefs. And so the fact that Kenneth Miller is a Catholic and still believes in God and is still an evolutionary biologist actually helped win that trial, whereas the kind of sort of in-your-face that approach in that instance, I'm just using this as one instance, I'm not saying this is definitive of my case, what I'm saying is in that one instance, that is an example of how having that moderate on your side and having them that benefited and helped sort of knock down the extremist side a bit, whereas if you'd gone to the sort of full other end of the spectrum, it could have easily failed and fucked it up.
Yeah, there are situations like that.
Works. For some people, one thing works. One thing will be, haha, you're an idiot, don't you realise you're mentally ill, etc., and insult them. For someone else, it could be, no, I just don't get it. And rather than telling them they're wrong, you say, I don't get it, can you just explain this bit to me, because I don't understand, and they'll explain it and say, well, but what I don't understand then is this other bit. How can they both be true? I'm confused. And what you do is you get them to explain to you why it's true, and they'll think of stuff that they've never thought of before and realise that it's contradictory and makes no sense. And that's what happens with those people. With other people, you can show them facts and they'll accept them and realise this is wrong. The things that my religion say are scientifically inaccurate, but then there are people that won't look at facts, they'll only work on an emotional level. So what's got to happen is Atheismo has got to be rude to people, Richard Dawkins has got to be rude to people, Coughlan's got to talk to people and be a bit of a wuss, and I don't know what the fuck I do. I just entertain myself, and you know,
let me address what you both said, okay? As far as what Richard said, you know, like any other situation in life, you can't always get what you want, and you may have to compromise, or you may have to take a situation like, again, on one sub-issue. But I'll actually get back to that in a minute. But my point overall is always aim for the utmost. Now, as far as what Rash has said about being rude, I'm not suggesting that rudeness is a necessary adjunct. I'm saying that you just have to take to the field in some sense. I mean, I'm a believer in sportsmanship, and I think that I've gotten far more criticism saying I'm too nice to our Muslim guests, especially. I'm too nice, too polite, don't go for the throat. But I mean, you need to engage. You need to push them, regardless of where they are on their spectrum. Otherwise, the baseline won't shift. You know what I mean? What constitutes the center won't change.
I think then the only difference between us here really is what we define as hitting them hard. I think that's it. I think when you say hit them hard, myself and Rationalizer have in our heads that kind of having a very aggressive and sort of almost hostile approach. That's what I sort of interpreted that to be. And I'm from what you're saying now, I don't think that's what you're suggesting. So I think what you and I are suggesting is it's a different. We're just differing on what we define as hitting them hard. I probably hit people as hard as, I mean, you've seen some of my videos. Sometimes yes. I can epically lose my shit. I did one a couple of weeks ago. I did a video. I got so angry I threw my laptop across the fucking room, and that was it. And so, and maybe that was effective to an extent. Maybe it wasn't. I don't know. But then, like I said, I think Rationalizer is essentially is really where I am. Is like I'll look at each situation individually. If I feel I need to take a sort of gentle hello, how are you approach. But I mean, for me, it's like I've never been the sort of guy who, even though I've been deemed a YouTube atheist, so to speak. I hate that fucking word. But when I came on YouTube, it's essentially right. I'm going to find people who I think are cunts or acting like cunts, and in a sort of in my own sort of interpretation of what that is. And if you're not acting like a cunt, or you're not a cunt, I'll leave you alone. And that's really sort of where I sort of grow. I don't really care whether it's because you're religious or whatever. Because a lot of what's interesting is because of their position on Islam, and because of a lot of atheists share the English Defence League's position on Islam, Pat Condell being one of them, which is why he favourites so many of their fucking videos and links to articles that basically tell lies and talk about how wonderful they are. People support them, and the EDL's, the English Defence League, one of their prime goals is to maintain this as a Christian country, and that doesn't sound like something to me that a sort of militant atheist should get on board with. But they get sort of like, and so to me it's like there's different degrees of it. I don't see it as just a religious problem, because outside of religion there's a million and one ways for people to be crazy, or for people
religion
to be,
religion is the symptom, not the problem. The problem
No,
is
wrong. Couldn't disagree. Couldn't
The
disagree
problem
more.
is faith and dogma. The problem is reactionism. I mean, the freaking atheists don't have a religion, right? And yet what we find is atheist dogma, all this kind of really dumb beliefs that atheists have. Oh yes, religion is the cause of most wars. In this kind of stupid rhetoric that everyone takes. Yes, Christianity caused the Dark Ages. Which you believe.
I'm sorry.
We're gonna have.
I couldn't agree with the
Don't
word
argue about that, though, will you? We'll just accept that one person believes it and the other person doesn't.
No, that's
Therefore,
bullshit.
You think it's true, he doesn't. Therefore, disproving his own point, because if there was an atheist dogma, then you'd both be believing it.
Exactly.
So
No.
You're strawmanning your own. You're strawmanning your own position, Klingschor.
No, I'm not saying all atheists. What I'm saying is that a lot of atheists are just as dogmatic and stupid as religious people, and they believe in this stupid kind of popular dogma, and they idolize Hitchens and
Okay, I'm sorry.
Criticize Hitchens.
No. There is a similar pattern you can discern, but to say that it is as pronounced, as bad, as far.
It's not as pronounced as a religion as other religions, right?
You are mistaking run-of-the-mill stubbornness on some people's part, which everyone can be stubborn. You can be stubborn about a game of Scrabble. You can be stubborn about anything, large or small. You're mistaking run-of-the-mill stubbornness with people who cannot change their beliefs. They need permission to change their beliefs that they can't receive. So you can have someone who is ordinary, of a very meek, mild, and not necessarily stubborn mentality, and they don't feel that they can change their beliefs. Otherwise, supernatural forces will have awakened their anger against them and so forth. So it's completely different.
The fact that there are worse ideologies or dogmas doesn't mean that what I'm pointing at isn't an ideology or a dogma. And sure, I mean, radical Islam is way worse than dogmatic popular anti-theism. I shouldn't say atheism, I should say popular anti-theism. But that doesn't mean that popular anti-theism doesn't have... There aren't... I mean, I'm an anti-theist, right? But I'm observing that there are some anti-theists who have sort of like an anti-theist ideology that has faith and has dogma. And they believe that they are special, and that people who are religious are more...
defining a lot of it, in a lot of cases, defining it as... I wouldn't say that Pat Condell is just stubborn.
No way, he's a deluded...
I'd say he's a deluded, paranoid, fear-mongering demagogue who promotes lies and conspiracy theories that are dangerous. And if you don't believe me, go read Anders Breivik's manifesto. Go read the 1,500-page manifesto of Anders Breivik and see how much of it. He even cites Pat Condell as one of his favourite people.
I have to stop you at the Anders Breivik thing. I don't care what Anders Breivik's favorite color was. That's not.
Okay, it's not about what his favourite colours. It's about who he listened to. It's about who he listened to and what they fed into him. And the fact is, a lot of people, when the stuff with Anders Breivik happened, it made a lot of people on the sort of right-wing conservative side of this argument, it made them very uncomfortable because they did ultimately agree. He used the same language. He used the same
rhetoric.
He used the same rhetoric. He had the same ideas. He had the same opinions. It's just the only difference was he wanted to get up off his arse and go and he basically found himself in the position where his only response to dealing with it is to get up and go and kill a load of people.
Yeah, actually,
he obviously wasn't mad at all, was he? Because he hated Muslims so much that he decided to pick up a gun and not shoot any.
Yeah.
He shot everyone except for Muslims.
Yes, exactly. Well, he shot the cultural Marxists.
I want to make an analogy here. Because I'm going to do an atheismo here. I'm going to do an analogy, okay? Now, don't kill yourself, rash man. Suicide is forbidden in Islam. Okay, so if you imagine you've got a holy book, right? Which promotes, holy war and martyrdom and bloodshed and martyrdom, and if you kill yourself in the way of God, which is the best way to die, which is sweet and awesome, and God wants that, and if you do, you're going to go to heaven and get a bevy of fucking 72 really hot bitches. Awesome, right? You would expect if this kind of literature was exalted as perfect and awesome and central to your society, you would expect there to be people to actually act upon it at some point, and for there to be holy war traditions and ghazis and mujahideen and all this kind of and all, so on and so forth. Right? That's the plural. You would expect people to act upon, like if the Holy Scripture says go kill people, you would expect people to take it seriously to actually go and kill people. Similarly, when you've got rhetoric that all Muslims everywhere are doing stealth jihad, they're all ordered by their religion to secretly convert anyone and everyone by whatever means necessary. Even liberal organizations are actually, fifth columns or something, or sneaky secret cells, and that they all want to kill you, and that there's this giant global movement. I mean, and to a degree there is a global movement, but it's all Muslims and the majority, and they all want to kill you, right? And what you have to do is throw them out of your country, and we have to get them out. It makes sense that people are going to fucking start, blowing stuff up and killing people. It's a logical extension of that kind of rhetoric.
It's very similar to what the comparison I made at the time was if there's a guy who's gone out there and he's killed a load of gay people, and it turns out this guy had all of Jerry Falwell's books and Pat Robertson's books and all of these books that talk about how gays are evil and gays cause hurricanes and that they all created AIDS and they're all paedophiles. You would wonder, sort of go, well, obviously, if these people hadn't been saying this, it would have helped not put this idea in his fucking head, and he might not have gone out and killed a load of gay people in a response to that. That was a comparison I made at the time. And because, if you create an idea, if you create a sort of conspiracy where everyone's against you and there's nothing, because these conspiracies, like the one of stealth jihad and Islamification, it's one of severe desperation and futility. Because you listen to them, it's like, well, everyone's they're all limp-wristed, lily-livered liberal pinko bastards who are all facilitating this Islamification, and they've all infiltrated, and they're all in the government. If you believe that, then it's no wonder someone's going to snap and go, fuck this, I'm going to go out and do something about it. And what's the only solution you've got? If I believed all the shit that Condell trotted out, I'd be a fucking paranoid, quivering mess too, and God knows what anyone else. And eventually, you put that idea in the wrong person's head. That's when you end up with something like Anders Breivik, or in the same cases, you end up with people like the 9/11 hijackers and stuff. It's the wrong ideas being put into the wrong people's heads.
Okay, your Breivik argument falls flat because in his manifesto he said he was 100% Christian. If we had acted sooner, and I don't know, it seems crazy. It seems crazy that we're talking about we're talking about the correct approach to counter religion, and you're citing the actions of one religious fanatic against another. Well, not even against another group, but his sentiment against another group. But his actual victims, as Rash pointed out, were just ordinary, summer campers.
But clearly he was it. But clearly, people like Aly Aly, who's an atheist, who he cites as an influence on his beliefs. People like Pat Condell, who he cites as an atheist, Geert Wilders, who's an atheist. These are people who are taking this balls out, in your face, fuck you approach to a religion, to an ideological position they pose. It doesn't matter that Anders Breivik was a Christian or not. The fact is, he had the same attitude to the religion as they do. I mean, Pat Condell, like I said, he favourites videos by the English Defence League. This is a Christian organisation, for fuck's sake, a fundamentalist Christian organisation who he will lend his ear to, and he will not ever condemn, no matter how many disabled people they kick to death at a rally or whatever. And at the end of the day, it's like, we're not just when you're an atheist on YouTube, or let's, for example, use YouTube as a platform. I'm an atheist on YouTube. When I talk to someone, I'm not just talking to fucking atheists, I'm talking to everyone. And I'm going to have a wide range of people who talk to me on that, and who are going to say, I've had hate mail from fundamentalist Christians condemning me because of my Pat Condell videos, purely because they agree with him on Islam. And that is an example of how that balls out in your face, big, massive 18-inch double-ended cock up the arse approach has failed, because it's got to the point where he's so vehemently anti something that anything that makes it look bad, he will cling on to and he will embrace. I mean, this a good example. One of the first cases I found of this was the Muslim demographics video, which is on YouTube, and it had at the time it had 12 million views, and it was
immigration, Islamic immigration.
It was this hideous piece of Christian propaganda, and it was very cleverly done, because nobody had a fucking clue who made it. It was just uploaded randomly on the internet, and it got 12 million fucking views. And but that's an example. That was something that I've seen so many atheists who have favorited that video and who have embraced what that video says. And even when I did my refutation of it and proved that all the statistics they used were made up, an ideology, whether it comes from an atheist or a Christian or a Muslim, isn't going to matter, because my favourite debate to watch is watch a Christian and a Muslim have a debate. It's the only time when you will agree with both sides. It's the only time when you disagree with both sides' assertions and agree with every refutation, because you both fall into that category. But that so whether a Breivik was a Christian or not is really irrelevant, as it's what ideas were put in his head and the people who promoted them that concerns me.
I agree with what you said about the debate in Christian and Muslim. I've told the story before, but sorry for everyone who's heard it before, I'm going to tell it again. That I was in the city centre, and there was a Muslim and a Christian arguing, and the Christian was arguing that Jesus was the Son of God, and he'd quote something from the Bible, and then the Muslim would say, no, he's not the Son of God, he's just a prophet, listen, and then quote something from the Quran, and then he'd quote something from the Bible, and he'd quote something from the Quran, and they were both getting really frustrated. And then suddenly the Christian said to the Muslim, look, it's not true just because it's written in a book,
We've brought back Jay. Jay, you're with us? We're going to try this again. If the connection problems continue, then I'll just read your question in text. So, can you hear us?
Okay. Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Thank you for joining us. What do you have for us today?
Okay. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes, we can.
He's talking about some of you. He's talking about freedom of speech for all. How can give freedom of speech for someone said I want to learn children how kill non-Muslim. I want to learn children kill everyone not agree with my Islam or my view of my Islam. How can give freedom of speech for someone such like that?
That's not freedom of speech. That's incitement to violence, which is illegal. Freedom of speech is saying what you believe, what you think. But at the point where you start to teach people to hate, or the point at which you teach people, incite people to injure, then you are breaking the law. That's not freedom of speech. That's incitement to hatred and violence, and those are illegal.
My response would be: let's say for argument's sake that let's say for argument's sake that you could say all those.
They abuse democracy.
Yeah, but
Okay,
here's the thing, Jay, if I may.
Salafi abuse
Hello?
democracy.
And they shouldn't be able to do that. If they're inciting people to violence, then that no one agrees with that. No one, the Salafis shouldn't be able to do that.
I mean, here's my thing, Jay. When someone goes out with, it's an interesting thing about Anjem Choudhury and his lot is that they actively promote the destruction of freedom of speech and democracy. And to me, it's like the best place for these nutters is to put them out there and let people look at them and laugh. And because that's what most people do. People are going to walk past someone like Anjem Choudhury, and they're going to hear what he has to say, and 99.9% of the time, they're going to go, "You're a fucking idiot, mate," and walk away. And so for me, when you allow people to, what Rationalizer and Klingschor said is that you can't come out there. If someone came out there and said, everybody should, you can say it in certain ways, but if they came out and said, "Oh, we will kill all of you, and we are going to blow you fuckers up," that would be against the law, because they're inciting violence. Incitement to riot is also an offence, and so they wouldn't be allowed to say that. But as far as people, more often than not, once they live in a society where they have freedom to say what they want, dress how they want, listen to music, watch TV, express themselves artistically, work and earn money fairly, and stuff like that. As soon as they live in that society, they want it. They want more of it. That's our human nature. So when some idiot comes along who wants to take that away from you and says that, most people who've lived in a free society and have experienced the benefits of it are going to say, "This guy's a fucking idiot," and they will wither away, and there'll be nothing more than attention seekers at that point.
Well, I think that there might be certainly a trend. We were way back when we were talking about the difference between integration of American versus European Muslims, and there seems to be a very strong correlation between the economic and educational standard and how well they're considered to be integrated, and how much there's social deviance, which should be expected in the States. Whether it's that the U.S. or in Canada as well, whether it's North American culture lends itself better to pluralism, and then they just get along both ways. That is the host population is just a little bit more amicable to them. Whatever it is, the Muslims in our neck of the woods, they typically average about middle class. The mean average is actually a little bit higher than the national average as far as educational standards and economic success. In Europe, I have to tread very carefully. I don't live there. Everything comes to me secondhand, but I have heard complaints about how there's a disproportionate number of people on what they call the dole. There's chronic unemployment and lower education standards and so forth. And if that's off base, then and someone can point that out to me, I'll retract it, because, like I said, it's anecdotal information for me. But it's
actually completely true. That's completely true.
Okay, fine. Okay, so I think that whether it's the type of person you're getting in the first place, or whether or not the host populations just aren't welcoming and are just more hostile. Maybe the U.S. got all of its racism out of its system. Not all of it, obviously, but I think that there's a big difference there. But nevertheless, even if you have a population that's relatively well off and therefore less vulnerable to the overtures, the problem just doesn't go away entirely. There's still you can still cause an incident and then drive a wedge and as a recruiting tool. Sorry, go ahead, Jay.
Yeah, guys, you all forget very important things. The sources. The source in Quran said you should kill everyone different than you. This statement in Quran repeated again and again and again.
Can you quote me a chapter
times in a day?
Can you quote me a chapter number and a verse number?
I'm sorry, Rash. You've read the Quran more than once.
No. Where does it say that they have to go out and kill everyone who's not a Muslim. I don't remember that part.
Okay. I will give to you. I will say that in Arabic. I don't know. اقتلوهم حيث ثقفتموهم وقاتلوا الكفار. This is repeated. I study Quran. I study Quran very carefully. I studied from since I was child. I know every word in Quran.
Jay, can I take? I'm going to take what Jay says at face value because
I will translation for you. I will translation for you.
I just want to say I only recognised one word in what you said in that Arabic, and that was qad. And as far as I'm aware, qatil means fight and qatl means kill. Is that correct? Qatil is fight.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Can I say, Jay,
there is ayah in Quran. I will tell you something. There is ayah in Quran. You can explain many way you want. Like this ayah called.
I can help you. Let me help you. Okay, so I can actually give you make your argument stronger and then give it some context. Okay, so what you want to look at is in Surah At-Tawbah, which is this the 9th surah of the Quran, At-Tawbah or Al-Bara'ah. I can't pronounce it very well, but you have to forgive me. And for example, thank you. I really would like a golden star sticker for that. Yeah, so in the 9th
Ayat al-Mufsina fil Ard, you know it? Ayat al-Mufsina fil Ard.
The most significant one is Surah 9, verse 29 in English. I'll link it so you can check out the Arabic here. And in it we're told, fight those who do not believe in Allah or in the last day. Fight them until they give the jizya and are in willing submission or humble submission or humiliated. So essentially, it's the Quran orders, and there are some verses that say don't fight people, and these were generally considered to be abrogated by this verse and other verses like it, and the ayat are safe, and so on and so forth. So go and fight everyone and attack everyone unless they convert to Islam, or if they're Christians and Jews, pay the jizya tax.
Yeah, so
or subdue to Islam. That's the distinction. I'm not saying that it's not a fascist kind of an ideology. I do believe that. I'm not saying that I think it's nice and it's full of peace and stuff like that. I'm not saying that either. I don't think it says go and kill everyone who isn't a Muslim. What I think it does say is go and fight everyone who isn't a Muslim, subdue them and make them abide by the ideology of Islam. But that's different from saying it says go and kill them all.
Yeah, I admit.
To be accurate.
I admit you have to make a distinction between kill everyone or kill and or enslave everyone.
But in public, in Arab country or Islamic country, it's 50% doesn't know even read. So there are not the difference between two. There are not recognized any different. They said they will do what Sheikh Salafi want exactly. They don't know. There are ignores. You cannot judge. You said I am realistic. I will give them equal and fair chance in life. Okay, you can do that, but you don't forget the source. The source is affect every single one. There is a child, teenager, everyone there. They are listening without understand.
Jay, here's the problem. In this country, as we've talked about, in the UK, we have groups of people who are Muslims of that nature, who have that attitude. And the fact is, they are rejected by the vast majority of Muslims who live there because they don't want to be that sort of person. I can go through any biblical text, like I can go through the Bible and find. There was a story. Let me give you a story. There was a story. This is like is it character?
Yeah, this is when you take a child to pray, and every prayer you say the same words, and you make brainwash for that child. You cannot you cannot tell me, and that child he will grow up and he will be peaceful person, just like that.
I can say that because they do.
Cannot.
I can say that
let Richard come back because it was directed at him.
I can say that for one reason. There are over 4 million Muslims who live in this country, and the vast majority of them have never killed anybody, or have never blown anyone up, or have never gone around doing and that's what. So I can say that they will grow up to be peaceful people. I've got Muslim mates I've got a mate called Imran, who's one of my best mates. Who's a Muslim, and he never chopped my head off when I stayed around his house.
I agree with you.
Yeah.
Oh, can I just quickly offer some clarity here? I think that the thing is that if you teach...
Let me help you. Come back, and then we'll let you have the last word, Jay.
Let me clarify for you, Jay. This will help, right? Okay. So if you bring up a child, and you indoctrinate them from birth to believe, that if you indoctrinate with the violence and the cruelty of the Quran, if you would indoctrinate them from birth, chances are they're going to grow up and they're going to be, people who are violent and extreme. But I would argue that most Muslim kids are not brought up indoctrinated with the violence. Instead, they would, like with Christians, at least, of course, we're talking about in a European or Western setting.
I agree.
They would be brought up with all the peaceful stuff. So it depends which aspects of the Quran and the scripture and the religion are emphasized to them as children. Yeah. Coughlan, you're frozen again.
Okay, Jay, we're gonna...
I agree with you, but there is... I agree with you. There is there is a big chance to turn to grow up and be a killer. Because the source of violence there, the source of violence in Quran,
violence is something.
There.
Here's the thing, Jay. In my experience, violence doesn't come from a book. Someone doesn't become violent because they read it in a book. They become violent because extreme circumstances. So you'll notice that the most extremes of religion happen in extreme environments.
No, violence comes from behavior.
Can I finish, Jay? You'll notice that extremism tends to happen at its most prevalent in extreme environments, specifically in poverty. Now, if you go look at some of the Christian
and refugee camps,
you go look at some of the Christian parts of Africa. For example, Uganda, which is a very Christian part of Africa.
No, I'm sorry. I think we all get the point, but tattling on Christianity, nobody's defending Christianity. I'm sorry, I can't spy and let you deny the utility that book is to the people that you're talking about.
I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is the book exists whether you like it or not. What I'm saying is the extremism comes from an extreme environment. The extremism does not come... If you've lived a comfortable life, and you live in a much more comfortable, where you've got a bit more money, you're a bit more freer, you can get an education, then the extremism does not come naturally to you. Extremism comes from an environment.
I agree with you.
Talking about,
extremism needs factors.
But that's the point. If you have someone who doesn't have an innate predisposition to this, then the only way extremism is going to get a hold on them is if someone with the veneer of authority manages to sort of pull them by the earlobe into that. And the book is a vital tool in that quest.
Guys, I don't say extremism or violence come from just paper, okay?
No.
I said this paper is holy Quran. And this holy Quran for Muslims, it's the way to live. It's not just read. It's the way to live. It's a lifestyle. It's completely lifestyle. That lifestyle is so dangerous.
Wait, let her finish. Let her finish.
Well, I totally get that, Jay. The problem is we can all sit there and talk about, well, the book's here and the book says this and the book is used, but the books already exist and they're always going to, whether we like it or not. The only thing we can regulate and the only thing we can focus on is how people is how the environment of people and how people's environments that they grow up in can cause them to get into a position where the violent, extreme stuff in these books becomes relevant. This is why places that are much more impoverished and
you cannot make all the people rich and education in their night. You cannot do that. But you can protect children from bad source. You can't protect children from bad source. Harmful ones.
Jay, you're absolutely right. Jay, you're absolutely right. I cannot, and we cannot end poverty. There's another thing I can't do. I can't erase the fact that two books, the Bible, the Quran, whatever, have existed for thousands of years and will always continue to do so. I can't erase that either. So I've got to look at what is more likely, and I'm not going to live in a world where I say, right, let's ban these books, because you can't ban a book at that age. So I was like, what can I do?
Don't put that book in school. Don't let children. Don't learn the children what's there. Don't tell them. This is the new generation. We put new generation in risk when I give them freedom of speech to learn children. That's awful book.
Okay, but wait, now, Jay, here's
new generation in risk.
Let me just say really quickly, Jay, and then we'll go to the Rationalizer because he has something. What I want to know is what's the final verdict? In other words, I agree with you that the Quran is filled with violent content, and that it's always sort of exuding its content into the culture around it, whether it's someone reading it themselves or someone getting it secondhand through an imam or sheikh. But are you going to ban it, or what does that have to do with what you started to say at the beginning when you called in about freedom of speech? Like, what's your actual policy about it that you think you can change things?
My policy is the first. Never ever let that book study that book in school. Bandit that.
I think the exact opposite.
This is first point. This is first point. No. I will tell you something.
Okay.
Even if you explain that book, you said I will give you the rational and good explanation for Quran. You will always find the source give you the ugly face. Okay? That's reality. Second, we need something make awarenesses for children when they grow up. You can read every book, but you read it with your mind. Don't let other people think about instead of you. I need that. I need put this that's in the children's mind.
Okay.
If you have a mind, you can think about it. You can think for yourself.
Yeah.
I think we all agree
the Rationalizer had something to say a moment.
Come on, it's unnatural for me to not talk for that long.
Yeah.
I can't be quiet that long. Come on.
Your voice is really distant.
Let the Rationalizer come back, and then we have another caller waiting.
There are a number of things I would really love to pull up on that, and they're all random. But first of all, in the just about anything can be used as a tool to spread hatred. If you look at like Darwin,
the voice is
evolution, it was misrepresented.
We can't hear you, Rash.
You're a bit quiet.
Can you speak up, Rash?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, better.
Right.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Just about anything can be used as a tool to make people hate other people. For example, the scientific theory of evolution.
That was a Freudian slip there.
That's been misused by people saying survival of the fittest, meaning the strong should destroy the weak, where it actually
Nietzsche inspiring Hitler to kill the Jews as well.
survival of
Let
those.
him, let
to
him,
survive
let
is
him
what
speak.
we mean. Let me finish. And then
Yeah, go
that
ahead.
has been misrepresented in order to cause people to kill people. That should not be banned. The Quran has been used and it has been presented to people in a way to make them kill people, but it shouldn't be banned. The idea of freedom of speech is, in the countries where you're talking about, like Pakistan, there isn't as much freedom of speech, and as a consequence of that lack of freedom of speech, people can't challenge the position that is being fed to these children, and therefore those people feeding their position have just got a free license to tell them whatever they want. And as you said, a lot of them can't read the words themselves. They're just told what they mean, and they're told by the people who want them to believe a certain agenda. Well, the answer there isn't to ban the Quran, it's to try to encourage freedom of speech and to try to make less people as ignorant as possible. These things do happen in extreme circumstances, not only poverty, but also in extreme anger and in extreme ignorance. If more people could read, they could make their own decisions. You generally tend to find that people who shape Islam in their own mind, in their own way, are people that live in non-extreme violent places with non-extreme ignorance, that can read it for themselves and they're not being forced to take a certain interpretation. You don't ban the book itself. You've got to promote education. You've got to promote the freedom for people to challenge ideas, and you can use video clips to make people hate. When indoctrinating people in the West, it's quite often video footage of European soldiers mutilating women and children in places like Afghanistan that are used in order to make them hate the British and the Americans. This is just another form. You shouldn't ban videos as a consequence. You've got to get rid of ignorance. You've got to give people freedom to say what they want without inciting them to hate or kill. And that is what's going to help. You've got to teach them to be able to read it for themselves and give them the freedom to decide for themselves what it means.
Well, but wait a minute. So the thing is, Rash, that's kind of very general advice. The fact of the matter is, are you going to... I direct the same question to you that I directed at Jay. What's your actual policy on this? Are you going to ban the sort of madrasas that indoctrinate the way Jay was talking about, or what? I mean, you can say you can have a counter-educational campaign, but what form would that even take? If you have...
What I'm saying is if you look at her examples, places like Pakistan, they are the perfect example of why you do need freedom of speech. Because in places like that, you're not allowed to question what you're being told, because A, you can't read it yourself, B, even if you can sound it out phonetically, you don't know what the words mean. Even if you do know what the words mean, you're not a scholar and you don't know the context. And there's so many prerequisites to stopping you from being able to decide what it means, that you must accept the opinion of the person that's giving you their opinion. That's because there's no free speech. You go to somewhere like the United Kingdom where there's a lot more free speech, and what you'll get is one Muslim who thinks you should kill everybody that isn't a Muslim versus someone else that says, no, we must just make the entire world submit to Islam, but through peaceful means, to someone else who thinks, no, there's no compulsion in religion, everyone can do what they want. And they've all got different opinions, they're all free to voice them, and whichever opinion becomes the most popular is the one that will succeed. It's not the one that's right, it's not the one that's the nicest or the nastiest, it's the one that's the most popular. And what we've got to do, I don't want to promote Islam, all I want to do is let people who are Muslims talk about it between themselves and try to breed an environment where people aren't in an extreme environment, they can put across more peaceful views of what they believe and hopefully convince other people. In the meantime, I'll try to convince them it's all a load of crap and they shouldn't believe it anyway.
Okay, so thank you for your participation, Jay. That was a great discussion. I'm going to let you go.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Take care, Salam. We have to move on to the next caller.
Hello?
Oh, whoops. Nothing personal, Jay.
That was you being in your face there. You just hung up on the phone.
Well, no, I'd already right-clicked, and then she said hello, and then my left finger dropped. What can you do? Anyway, we're going to bring in Aly Aly, who has something for us. Anyway, I think that I would do the opposite of what it sounded like Jay was proposing. Instead of saying, don't read the Quran, I would do the thing they did in Clockwork Orange, where they strapped the guy down and made him listen to music and held his eyes open, but I would just force every religious person to finally read their religious text as the speakers shouted it at them, so that they could never be deceived as to its content again, and hopefully most of them would realize what a load of garbage these holy books really are, or at least that they're not of otherworldly origins, you know?
Just before Aly Aly speaks, right, it's just a gut feeling, but I'd like to put across before he even speaks that Ali, his last name is his name is Ali Ver.
No, Aly, you couldn't be more wrong. He actually hosts our sister show, Arab Atheist Broadcasting.
Oh, all right then. Okay. I just had suspicion. The name Ali
your
Aly.
conspiracy
There's
theory.
no picture whatsoever. I thought it's going to be Oliver.
No, it happens a lot in people with tribal backgrounds who immigrate to the United States, because a lot of them are usually named after the founder of the tribe or the clan. And so usually the firstborn son is named after the founder of the clan. And when you come to the United States on the immigration paperwork, they ask you what your family name is and what your given name is. And so what happens is, if you're an eldest son and you don't really understand what's going on very well, what you end up putting down when they say family name is the tribal name, which is the name of the founder. And then the given name of your eldest son is probably going to be the same. And so in the United States, you get a lot of guys from, tribal areas in the Arab world with the same first and last names. But, yeah.
My first name's Dick, so that doesn't say. It says a lot about the founders of
I'm sorry, Aly Aly, because Oliver's a troll that comes on and trolls us. He thinks he's fun. And I shouldn't have thought you're Oliver, because evidently Oliver has hacked Klingschor's account and come on and dressed as a sex.
Let's do a talk about banning the burqa with Klingschor wearing
Right,
this.
he's got some Klingschor. You haven't got your gimp gag in your mouth.
Klingschor, say in this voice, fine like this.
Fierce and jihadi.
What you need, Klingschor? You need a bone mark.
This is menacing right here.
All right, enough silliness.
Bone
Enough silliness. Aly, what did you have for us today?
Oh, well, I wanted to come in and give a little bit of constructive criticism to Coughlan, and I think that he has a bit of an illusion about how moderate most Muslims are, and the reason I say that is because through my involvement in at least the newly emerging Arab atheists, which are a significant group at this point. And what you find is that it's not, in fact, political ideologies and things like that that are kind of moving people. What you find is that just an ordinary neighborhood, one guy finds out another guy's an atheist, and the next thing you know, the entire neighborhood is basically trying to lynch this guy. And when the police are called for protection because they fear that their house is going to be burnt down, the police end up arresting the atheist. And
Can I quickly ask, Ali, before you finish, what country are you specifically referring to?
So, no, this is Egypt. This is Egypt.
Right. Let me just make something clear then, because I don't want you to be under any illusions of what my position is. When I sort of talk about moderates and extremists, in regards to the sort of issues I deal with, I'm speaking more specifically in Europe and more in general in my country.
Well, no, I get that.
I'm not talking about it as a whole. I totally
get that. No, I get what you're saying.
I totally get that in a lot of parts of the world, if you were to take Muslims as a whole, in terms of the global thing, the sort of however you want to define extremist or moderate, I don't know how everyone has their own. I personally don't like the binary sense of nature of that, but I know that there's going to be a lot more extremism than you would find, say, if you took a global consensus of Christianity. And I know that I'm more interested when I do my videos and stuff. I'm more interested in sort of focusing on the sort of groups, the Muslim communities in my country who are sort of singled out, who would never go around and say let's lynch a guy who's an atheist who lives nearby.
Okay, so let me just again, let me just be clear here. All right? I'm being constructive. I'm not I mean, I certainly don't agree with the EDL or Pat Condell either.
Yeah.
I mean, that's obviously not what we're not what the end goal is. No, but my criticism comes from when you and I believe, I can't even remember now, but you were basically saying that going too hard on the religion part is somehow not a good idea, or
it's not a good idea as such. What I'm saying, I mean, it depends in what context you're looking at it from.
In all contexts.
Okay. Well, in that sense, then it would depend totally on. Like I said, it depends on each individual situation. I mean, a lot of what I have done, and a lot of obviously what the guys here in this call do, is via YouTube. And if you're on YouTube, you already have access to a pretty liberal internet with very little restriction, and you have a video camera, and people are going to be a lot easier to talk to because you're probably more open to sort of interaction and debate already. As far as a sort of looking at it in each different, like in a global context, I don't deal with things on that scale. So yeah, certainly, I'm not saying that not going hard or being tough is always a bad thing. What I'm saying is that if you treat each situation that you find yourself in, dealing with someone who's religious, in that sort of gung ho bull in a china shop way.
Right, and this is precisely where I'm disagreeing with you.
It's
right.
Just to deal with this.
Yep, and this is precisely where I'm disagreeing with you, because what I'm trying to tell you is that, well, at least, I mean, basically my point, the point that I'm trying to make is that in fact it is always best to attack at the religious core, because what you do find is that even though while these moderates that at least from my general experience, they're going to follow whatever these religious leaders are saying. And so basically you've got to shame everybody into not bringing this type of thing into the public square. And basically that's I think where we're going to disagree enormously, because if anybody wants to bring in, if whether it's nice, a good thing that they're backing, or a bad thing, I don't think that it's a good idea to condone religious nonsense just because we agree with the ends that it's aiming at. And I think that that kind of promoting that kind of thing is actually harmful, because basically you're telling them that their delusions are okay, even though they've come to the right conclusion, but because of delusions that are based on nothing. And so then when those delusions are, so to speak, taken away from them, then they've basically got no grounding for these issues. And what you end up finding is, yeah, go ahead.
The problem that let me just make it clear. I would never condone anyone having anything that I would define as a delusion. The difference is I've only got so many hours in the day, and I'm only one person, and so it's what delusion am I going to focus on more? Now, I tend to focus more on what I would consider political delusions ahead of religious ones in certain circumstances. In this case, because obviously I focus more, a lot of my stuff on my channel isn't so much religious based in criticism. I'm more criticizing people's politics. That's just because that's what I find more interesting. That's not because I don't find religion to have its to not be delusional. But it's like if I'm dealing with a guy who is an extreme far-right nationalist, and he's attacking a group of Muslims, or he's attacking a Muslim guy who is doing nothing wrong purely on the basis that he is a Muslim, I'm going to go after the nationalist guy first, if you know what I mean. I think because I find his one is the most problematic, if that makes sense. Do you know what I mean? It's not that the other guy, it's not that I'm going, right, your delusion is fine, I condone it. What I'm saying is this guy's delusion is more problematic, and I'd rather focus on that one first before I sort of move on. Because this is the thing.
Well, I mean, I'm not nobody. Let me just make this absolutely clear. I don't think a single person on this panel has at any point suggested that the EDL or Pat Condell is something to be shooting for. I mean, I don't think that anybody here has reiterated that, and that's really a straw man that nobody's has built to here. I think that what we're saying is that this playing nice or soft with Islam and for fear of offense or seeming like you're a racist, I think is a problem. And I agree that some people who are racists are using that type of rhetoric that we use to attack an idea, rightfully so, to just hate the brown people. And I get what you're saying on that end. What I'm saying is that as soon as you've made it clear that that's not what you're doing, that you cannot hold any punches. You need to go and swing as hard as you can. At least, if you're not willing to do it yourself, don't stand and criticize people who are trying to.
Can I insert something right here?
No. Let me.
Okay, fine. Fair enough.
Let me just make one more point.
Yes.
See, I get a lot of people who are supporters of the people I make videos about. The problem I have is that the criticisms of Islam that would be done by someone like the Rationalizer, that would be done by someone like the Council of Ex-Muslims of Britain, that would be done by Klingschor, Captain Disguise, these are not the criticisms of Islam that are held up and viewed in the most popular sense, and I want them to be. I want people. I wish like Klingschor and Rationalizer and Captain Disguise and Stop Spamming One. I wish those guys had 150,000 subscribers, and people like Pat Condell and people like Pat Condell and that had a few thousand. Then I wouldn't have to waste my time on it. I want there to be a debate about other people's religious beliefs, and I want there to be people out there criticizing them. And
okay, but I'm sorry. I just heard. Did I just hear you link together Pat Condell and Thunderfoot, or did I?
No, I didn't say Thunderfoot. I didn't say Thunderfoot.
Okay, all right.
Thunderfoot.
You did or you did not? I'm sorry. I might be.
I didn't say.
Okay, all right. What was the other channel? What was the other channel?
I just said things like the EDL and. And basically the thing about Pat. Whilst I disagree with Thunderfoot on a million one things, I don't put him in the same category as Pat Condell, and so I don't want to. But I don't need to discuss that. That's a different conversation. But the thing is, people like when I criticise a Pat Condell video or I make a video criticise someone like Martin J. Willett or people like this, I will get people saying that people like me are trying to stifle the debate, and that's the complete opposite of what I want to do. I want people like who make actual good, decent criticisms of Islam to be the ones who are the voices most heard. And in order for them to get heard, I can't criticize.
Let me ask you just a quick question, and this is just something off the top of my head. Would you let's say be okay with military intervention in Egypt to defend some of the minorities there? And would you be in favor or against that?
To be honest, I can't answer that question because I don't know enough about. The international things like that.
Well, let's suppose, and then this is again. I mean, this is. I'm not telling you to go start a campaign. What I'm saying is, let's say it is now abundantly clear that minorities need protection in a country like Egypt or Saudi Arabia or whatever country. Okay, would you be okay with intervention militarily? I mean, it's probably going to be by the West. I mean, let's be realistic here. There's no other power is really going to be able to pull this off. Would that be? Would you be okay with that, or is that?
On the assumption, let's say,
or is that discrimination against Muslim culture? Is basically the question.
No, not at all. That's not a problem for me. Intervention in something. The thing is like in people talk about the West interfering in this, that, and the other, but then they'll have a go at the West for not interfering in one situation or another. Like they'll talk about Afghanistan or Iraq, but then they'll say, why didn't you interfere in Zimbabwe, or why aren't you looking at North Korea or whatever? And it's like, to me, it's like, well, you either want people to interfere or you don't. If we're interfering in the right places for the right, I understand in Egypt there are Christians who are treated like absolute unbridled shit, and I don't agree with that, and I don't want that. And if we can stop that from happening, and I understand there's going to be negative consequences to that, whether we no matter how well it goes, because there's always going to be people who want to spin things in their favour. But no, I don't have a problem. And likewise, it's but that goes both ways. I mean, if there was an intervention required in any context and you could provide it, I think you have a moral obligation to sort of step in and make something, try and make something right if you can.
So what about? I mean, what did you guys think about the video that the Coptic Christian guy made that?
Well, I
haven't seen that, so I can't comment on that.
I watched it just for disclosure purposes. I found it hilarious. But the biggest problem with the video is that everything was so inaccurate.
I don't think so. I thought that it was a parody. I mean, obviously,
well, I don't know.
I mean, this guy was a historian making this. It's not a documentary exactly. It does its job. It's funny. It's kind of based on what it says.
It does its job.
It's a goofy movie. Yeah,
it sure did. It was designed to piss people off, and it sure did. I mean, I don't know if it was just a deliberate piss take, fine, but just all of the individual claims it makes, they're just wrong. So, I'm a stickler for accuracy, and the thing is, we're all, at least to one degree or another, versed in the lore and the histories. If you wanted to find unflattering stories about Muhammad or the Sahaba, the companions, you didn't have to make shit up, but they did anyway. So
I don't agree with that. I don't think they made very many. I don't think that it was absolutely like they just made the stuff up out of thin air. I mean, obviously it probably didn't take place like that, but it was pretty close to the storyline. It wasn't that far off. I don't think there was anything egregiously. And then again, I saw the Arabic dub. I didn't actually see the English version, so I maybe.
Oh well, everybody needs to go watch that. It's like a combination. Okay, imagine if Tommy Wiseau had been charged with directing what was it? Life of Brian. It's like The Room and Life of Brian put in a blender together and poured out. It is just so bad. Anybody who got angry over that should really be embarrassed. But there's nothing more fun than going around using an inside joke around people who aren't privy to it. So I'd go around people who aren't internet savvy, and if they got at all testy with me, I'd say, "Okay, you bastard of unknown father," and they'd have no idea that it was a line from the vid, and I would just be in stitches laughing at my own joke while they just stood there mystified. But that's like a lot of my conversations and interactions with people in the real world. So anyway, I thought this was a great show. We're going to wrap it up soon. Thank you, Aly Aly, and our other panelists. Thank you, Coughlan, for stopping by here. There is one last comment that the Rationalizer has, and then we will wrap it up. Nobody gets the last word. Rationalizer, go ahead.
Thanks. Right, it's a bit of a difficult one. There's a guy on YouTube called Jason. I became aware of his channel because he has a lovely moustache. He does good videos, but I'm not here to pimp his channel or anything. Some time ago, they found out that his daughter had cancer, and it's really affecting her very badly. There's no money begging going on or anything like that. One thing that does seem to make her very happy is she's a big fan of the film Brave. And because of what she's going through, she's obviously being very brave. Lots of people have been posting on a Facebook wall simply a picture of them holding a thing saying brave on it or something like that. And when she comes back from hospital, she looks through and she looks at the silly different ways people have done brave, and it really cheers her up. So if anyone would like to go and post something on a wall, the address is tinyurl.com. Ariel is brave. That's ARIEL. ARIEL. Ariel is brave. If anyone would do that, I'm sure it would cheer her up quite a bit, and it would mean a lot to the family. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thank you, everyone, and we'll see you
find
again.
us on Facebook, Twitter, and Blog TV, and YouTube.
Anyway.
I had a very good time. Thank you.
Yeah, it's 3 hours, and I don't think any of us really covered all the points that we want to make. The point is, I got one of my really horrible nesting doll analogies out there, and that's all that matters to me. So we'll see you all again in 2 weeks.
I got to dress up.
Thank you all for watching, and especially thank you again to our guest, Richard. As with all of the guests that we have on, we acknowledge the courage it comes on to come to a panel where you're the only person of your opinion against a whole panel of skeptics, and you're the only Islamo-Nazi sympathizing traitorous liberal trout. So like I said, thank you very much, and we'll see you all again in 2 weeks. Goodbye. So long.